Phoenix Nights. Chapter 482. How lively! Within the Bloodshed God Palace, the entrance to Dongbu Shui Ying's cavern dwelling was wide open. The deities of the Xia people were all looking outside, and the place was bustling with noise. Brother Dongbu, I'll be leaving with my teacher soon. I can't stay here for long, so I'll bid my farewells here. 7th Mei Yu had taken on the appearance of a woman. She smiled. If there's anything, you can contact me. All right. I'll be staying in the Bloodshed God Palace for quite some time. I believe that the next time we meet, we'll both be world deities, Dongbu Shuang said. That's only natural. 7th Mei Yu nodded lightly before turning around and leaving. Following behind her were a few female attendants. Dongbu Shuang watched from afar. The myriad flower feast had ended, and the powerful existences were about to leave. Naturally, their disciples would have to follow them. As for those God-ranked experts who were ranked at the bottom, they were usually able to become disciples of stage 4 or 3 world deities. Even if they did not accept any disciples, they would still choose to join the Bloodshed Tavern or the army. As a result, the cavern dwellings of the surrounding deities would be bustling with activity. Because he had become a disciple of God Emperor, Dongbu Shuang did not have to leave the Bloodshed God Palace. Junior disciple Brother Dongbu. On the day that the myriad flower feast ended, just as he bid farewell to 7th Mei Yu, the bald white-robed teenager, eldest disciple Brother Huiming, arrived. Senior disciple Brother Huiming. Dongbu Shuang warmly welcomed him. Jingqiu was by his side, and the three of them sat down. Junior disciple Brother, take this. Eldest disciple Brother Huiming waved his hand, causing a bright red fruit to appear on the stone table. Its fragrance wafted outwards. Myriad flower true fruit? Dongbu Shuang was startled. That won't do. This is more important to you, senior disciple Brother. I've participated in the 10,000 flower banquet too many times, and I've eaten many rare treasures. Eldest senior Brother Huiming shook his head lightly. I am currently stuck at the final step, unable to truly transcend. This myriad flower true fruit is of no help to me. Not just me, but many of the powerful existences and stage 4 world deities who participate in the myriad flower feast will usually bring the myriad flower true fruit to their juniors. To you, the benefits of the myriad flower true fruit are even more obvious in the early stages of cultivation. Senior Brother Huiming, please give this fruit to your disciple. I've already eaten one, Dongbu Shuang said. Them? Their talents are limited. Eldest senior Brother Huiming shook his head. Ate one? If you want to eat it after tens of thousands of years, you can let your main body in the material realm eat it. Since I've given it to you, there's no reason for me to take it back. I'm here today for a more important matter. Dongbu Shuang couldn't reject it, so he accepted it and remembered this favor for the time being. More important matter? Dongbu Shuang was puzzled. Now that you have become His Majesty's disciple, it's a great opportunity for you. Eldest senior Brother Huiming said. His Majesty is very strict when it comes to teaching disciples. You should know this. Amen. Dongbu Shuang nodded. I know. Master is very strict when it comes to teaching disciples, and the competition between disciples is extremely intense. Those who are strong and have potential will be bestowed with even better rewards. Those who perform poorly will be bestowed with worse rewards. The Blood Blade didn't treat everyone equally, even if they were all inner disciples. If the God Emperor liked them and felt that they were worth grooming, he might bestow them with treasures that would make stage 3 and 4 world deities jealous. And if the God Emperor didn't like them and felt that they had no potential, he might ignore them and not give them any treasures at all. Eldest senior Brother Huiming nodded. How does the God Emperor judge whether a disciple is worth grooming or not? Do you know? Dongbu Shuang shook his head lightly. How? Personal preference? Cultivation speed? That's what I want to tell you. Eldest senior Brother Huiming laughed. This can be considered a secret. Regardless of whether it's his subordinates or his disciples, the God Emperor will always secretly judge them. Whatever he asks you to do, you must do it as quickly as possible and as perfectly as possible. If you don't do it well, your position in his heart will drop. For example, if he asks you to learn a certain secret art, and you learn it too slowly, he will naturally be disappointed. After being disappointed 2 or 3 times, he will no longer care about that disciple. Eldest senior brother Huiming said. Understood. Dongbua Shuang nodded. As long as it's master's orders, I will definitely do my best. Also, if we talk about the most powerful absolute arts, His Majesty has the most. Eldest senior brother Huiming said in a low voice. He has even more than the Bamboo Mountain Prefecture Master. Dongbua Shuiying's eyes brightened. If His Majesty asks you to go to a certain level of the Sealed World Pagoda to learn a secret art, you must definitely learn it well. Eldest senior brother Huiming's eyes were filled with anticipation. The better your performance, the more secret arts His Majesty will allow you to learn in the Sealed World Pagoda. One day, you will discover that all the secret arts can be combined to form an extremely powerful absolute art. The absolute arts imparted by the God Emperor are something that even a personal disciple would have to go through a series of tests before they can obtain a complete absolute art. For example, an inner disciple would usually only be able to learn a few scattered parts of the absolute art. To be able to learn a complete set is extremely difficult. However, you must not give up. You must do your best. The more satisfied His Majesty is, the more he will allow you to learn. If you can learn a complete set, that would be extremely powerful. Is it very powerful? Dongbua Shuang asked. Extremely powerful. Eldest senior brother Huiming grinned. It's extremely powerful. I'm willing to give up all my treasures, even my paradise treasures, in exchange for an absolute art. Let alone me, even powerful existences, would desire to learn an absolute art. Dongbua Shuang was astonished. Even powerful existences desired it? How did the Bamboo Mountain Prefecture Master become so powerful? How could a stage 4 world deity live for so long, to the point that he was known as one of the 3 ancestors? Eldest senior brother Huiming said in a low voice. I heard that he cultivated an extremely powerful absolute art to an extremely profound level. Back then, he even wantonly spread his faith, all for the sake of this absolute art. As a result, he became entangled with karma, unable to truly transcend. Even so, he has lived longer than many powerful existences. Even powerful existences have died in battle, yet he is still alive. Furthermore, his strength is tyrannical. Ordinary powerful existences have to treat him with respect. Dongbua Shuang was astonished. Thus, no matter how great the price you have to pay, no matter how hard you work, as long as you can learn a complete absolute art, then you will truly be formidable. Eldest senior brother Huiming hurriedly said. His Majesty has many disciples under him, like the White Sand City Lord, who have only learned bits and pieces of it. Oh, right. Other than the Sealed World Pagoda, His Majesty's hidden library is also famous. Eldest senior brother Huiming said. The hidden library contains countless books, and it's said that they were all collected by His Majesty over a long period of time. Amidst the seemingly vast and complicated books, there is actually an absolute art. Of His Majesty's 2 powerful existences disciples, the other one, you should know of Monarch Green, right? Dongbua Shuang nodded. Of the 2 powerful existences disciples of the Bloodblade, Monarch Gu Zhang spent most of his time in seclusion, rarely coming out. The other one, Monarch Green, was even more tyrannical. Due to some grudges, he had betrayed the Bloodshed God Palace, and his combat power was unfathomable. A long time ago, he had reached the level of the 3 ancestors. Currently, many powerful existences believed that Monarch Green was on the same level as the Bloodblade, the Temporal Island Lord, and the Myriad God Palace Head. Monarch Green discovered an absolute art while browsing through the countless books in the hidden library, the Mountain World. Relying on this absolute art, he once heavily injured Pang Yi with a single punch. At that time, Pang Yi was already one of the 3 ancestors. Naturally, it was due to this that Pang Yi created his own cultivation technique and accepted many disciples. Eldest senior brother Huiming said. Huiming said all this in order to isolate all senses. His combat power was close to that of a powerful existence, so isolating all senses was a simple task. His Majesty once said that the hidden library indeed contains the mountain world absolute art. Any disciple of his, including honorary disciples, can enter and read it. It's a pity that after so many years, those disciples could only comprehend bits and pieces of it. Nobody has ever been like Monarch Green and comprehended the complete, mountain world, absolute art from it. Eldest senior brother Huiming said, "For the time being, you don't have to care about the mountain world, absolute art. You've just become a disciple, so follow His Majesty's instructions and cultivate it well. In the future, when your combat power truly reaches a bottleneck, you can enter the hidden library to read it properly." Amen. Dongbua Shuang nodded. That's why I said that being able to become a disciple of His Majesty is an opportunity. It all depends on whether you can grasp it or not. Eldest senior brother Huiming said in anticipation. Chapter 483. Dongbua Shuang. Not long after Huiming left, a world deity guard arrived at Dongbua Shuiying's abode. "I'm here on His Majesty's orders. You should quickly prepare and bring your subordinates to move to the Crimson Stone Courtyard. We've already prepared and can set off at any time." Dongbua Shuang stood up. Jing Qiu's Xia people and the other deities had also finished their preparations. Some of their belongings were in their storage treasures, and everyone had been waiting for a long time. After all, the abode of an inner disciple was completely different from that of a deity participating in the myriad flower feast. "Let's go. Follow me." The world deity guard nodded and led the way. Hua. The world deity guard led the way, and an invisible force enveloped the group as they quickly flew into the Bloodshed God Palace. Even though the Bloodshed God Palace was only slightly larger than the Kamsi Prefecture city, they still had to fly for more than 2 hours before they arrived at a relatively remote and quiet courtyard. Above the entrance of the courtyard were the 2 words in stone from the deity world. These 2 words faintly connected the courtyard to the entire Bloodshed God Palace, causing it to emit a thick and dense aura. Following the entrance of the courtyard, they soon arrived at a relatively simple abode that occupied an area of about 5 kilometers. "Dongbua Shuang, this will be your abode. You and your subordinates will live here in the future," the world deity guard said. "The detailed rules of the courtyard will naturally be informed by the attendants of the courtyard. My mission is complete, so I'll take my leave now. Sorry for the trouble." Dongbua Shuang stood up to send him off. This world deity guard was a stage 3 world deity, and was most likely one of His Majesty's personal guards. "You just wait here. I reckon His Majesty will summon you very soon." The Universe God Guard smiled and turned to leave. There were many servants and maids arranged within the abode, and from them, many of the rules were learned. The Crimson Stone Courtyard was a place Bloodblade often visited. All of his disciples lived there, and the rules were extremely strict. Honorary disciples, inner disciples, and personal disciples all had different areas of activity. For Dongbua Shuang, there were many places that were forbidden. They couldn't trespass. As for Jing Qiu, Yunhai, Dragon Mountain Emperor, and the others, their range of movement was even smaller. They could only walk along a corridor and enter from the back door. Inner sect disciples can have 100 personal guards. Personal guards are at the 15th rank. Dragon Mountain Emperor looked at a golden book and couldn't help but say, "All of us added up to less than 100 people. Doesn't that mean we can easily get a rank? It doesn't matter if you obtain a rank or not." The Purple Thunder Emperor said, "The rules within the Bloodshed God Palace are very strict. Most of the places were open to us, and no one dared to mess with us. Right now, Snow Eagle's personal guard is only at the 15th level, which is the lowest level. Once Snow Eagle completes his cultivation and finishes his apprenticeship, he will definitely obtain an official position. At that time, his personal guard's rank will be much higher." Dongbua Shuang smiled. This was the only thing he could do to improve the lives of the Xia people and the other deities. "Junior brother Dongbua, teacher is calling for you." A slightly cold voice sounded from outside. It should be a woman. I'll leave first. Dongbu Shuang immediately stood up and walked out. Walking out of the cavern dwelling, he saw a gray-robed girl. She looked ordinary, but that unconcealed aura of hers allowed Shuang to determine that she was a Stage 3 world deity. Junior brother Dongbua, I am also an inner disciple under teacher. My name is Gong Feng. You can just call me Senior Sister Gong Feng, the gray-robed woman said. Senior Sister Gong Feng, Dongbua Shuang immediately said. The gray-robed woman brought Dongbua Shuang along as they walked through the courtyard. As they walked, she chatted. Teacher rarely accepts disciples during the myriad flower feast. Most of the time, he travels all over the place and occasionally accepts a disciple. You were accepted as a disciple during the myriad flower feast under the watchful eyes of so many powerful existences. Teacher must be quite fond of you. Now I'm the oldest among the inner disciples in this courtyard. That's why there are many things that teacher leaves to me. If there's anything you need, feel free to look for me. Thank you, senior sister, Dongbua Shuang said. It's just a small matter. The gray-robed woman smiled. Soon, she brought Dongbua Shuang into a garden. Within the garden, there was a lake with aquatic plants growing in it. On the ground beside the lake, the crimson-robed blood blade was sitting cross-legged. His loose robes were spread out on the ground. His eyelids were drooping, and he emitted an invisible aura that caused the entire garden to be silent. On his shoulder was a peculiar black bird. At first glance, the bird's feathers were pitch black, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that they were faintly translucent and had some inconspicuous colors. Teacher. The gray-robed woman bowed. I've brought junior apprentice brother Dongbua. Greetings, teacher. Dongbua Shuang also respectfully bowed and stood to the side. It was difficult to see Bloodblade's face clearly. He could only feel an endless darkness of destruction spreading out from him. Even though he was sitting there cross-legged, Dongbua Shuang felt like an ant looking up at a gigantic dragon. Hua! Bloodblade's drooping eyelids suddenly opened. 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes, instantly shooting into Dongbua Shuang's eyes. Boom, boom, boom. A large amount of information poured into his mind. The world divine heart is about tolerance, like the rivers in the sea. The world-shaking voice continuously resounded in Dongbua Shuang's mind. There was too much information, and there was even a large amount of battle scenes. These were scenes of a blurry figure holding a spear in battle. Voice, scenes, words. There was too much information. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, Dongbua Shuang completely woke up. He was immediately overjoyed, as he knew that this was a very detailed guidance. It was divided into 2 parts. One part was the guidance of the world divine heart, and the other part was the guidance of the chaos divine heart. Thank you, teacher, Dongbua Shuang hurriedly said. You have a chance of grasping the world divine heart and the chaos divine heart. Don't overdo it, Bloodblade said indifferently. Then, he waved his hand and threw out 2 black tokens, which flew in front of Dongbua Shuang. Dongbua Shuang caught them and carefully examined them. These 2 tokens had the numbers 351 and 95 on them. These are the tokens of the sealed world tower, Bloodblade said indifferently. With these 2 tokens, you can enter the 95th and 351st worlds respectively to cultivate. These 2 worlds will be of great help to you in grasping the world divine heart and the chaos divine heart. Alright, you may leave? Yes. Dongbua Shuang was slightly bewildered. They had just met, yet he had barely exchanged a few words before being asked to leave. This master of Bloodblade was truly domineering. Dongbua Shuang immediately bowed and left the garden. 2 tokens of the sealed world tower? Dongbua Shuang was quite delighted. He had chatted with eldest senior brother Huiming for a long time, and knew that inner disciples usually only had a single token of the sealed world tower. It was indeed quite good for him to obtain 2 tokens on his first try. Furthermore, the large amount of information in his mind gave Dongbua Shuang many insights. Bloodblade's guidance was indeed much better than Monarch Mo Shui's. Inside the garden, Bloodblade was still sitting there, his eyelids drooping. Bloodblade, The black bird on his shoulder said. Kakik, how rare! An inner disciple is directly given 2 tokens of the sealed world tower? You think so highly of him? Amen, Bloodblade indifferently replied. Then how long do you think it will take for him to grasp a grade 1 deity heart? The black bird asked. Within 1,000 years. With my guidance, the sealed world tower's assistance, and his comprehension ability, he should be able to grasp a grade 1 deity heart within 1,000 years. He should comprehend the world deity heart first, and the chaos deity heart will be slower, Bloodblade indifferently said. He slightly raised his eyelids and glanced at the gray-robed woman beside him. Gongfeng, disciple is here, the gray-robed woman respectfully replied. For the next 1,000 years, send him a set of 9 fruits every year, Bloodblade ordered. Go. The gray-robed woman was somewhat shocked. 9 fruits? This was something that His Majesty, the God Emperor, would only arrange for disciples he truly liked. A set of 9 fruits was made up of 8 different spirit fruits and a special fruit wine, extremely rare and precious. Yes, the gray-robed woman hurriedly replied and left. Kakik, Bloodblade, a set of 9 fruits every year. If you can't comprehend it within 1,000 years, won't you lose face? The black bird joked. I'm not mistaken, Bloodblade indifferently replied. The gray-robed woman heard the conversation between Bloodblade and the black bird behind her, and sighed inwardly. Her master truly thought highly of this disciple. Star. Chapter 484. That very night, as the curtain of night fell, the bloodshed god Emperor's disciples within the Crimson Stone courtyard held a banquet to invite Shuang. Junior disciple, when we first entered Master's tutelage, we were only given a single command token for the sealed world pagoda. You, on the other hand, had 2. We are truly envious. You're envious and jealous just like that? Didn't you hear Senior Sister Gongfeng say that 1 portion of the 9 fruits every year lasts for 1,000 years? So what if we're envious? Junior disciple Dongbua will most likely grasp a grade 1 deity heart within a few thousand years. With his cultivation speed, he should be comparable to a grade 1 true meaning transcendent. I believe it won't be difficult for him to become a stage 4 world deity. The disciples of the bloodshed god Emperor were all chatting and laughing, with Shuang as the center. Some of them were even trying to flatter him. Dongbua Shuang was also busy dealing with the various parties. Including himself, there were a total of 19 inner disciples and 25 honorary disciples residing in Crimson Stone Courtyard. Most of them had reached a bottleneck, and were unable to advance any further. Most of these inner disciples were stage 2 or 3 world deities. As for the honorary disciples, they were all stage 1 world deities, with a few being stage 2 world deities. Even though it was difficult for them to advance any further, they still came to Crimson Stone Courtyard for the sake of the absolute art, mountain world, within the library. Monarch Green had once relied on this art to heavily injure one of the 3 ancestors, Pang Yi, with a single punch. Monarch Green's strength and status were higher than that of the 3 ancestors and the mysterious North Imperial Empress. In the deity world, he was the closest to the likes of Bloodblade, the Temporal Island Lord, and the Myriad God Palace Head. Knowing that the library contained this absolute art, it was only natural that they would come. Even if they could not grasp the complete absolute art, just comprehending some bits and pieces of it would be enough for them to dominate even amongst world deities. Junior disciple Dongbua, you should know that as long as His Majesty's disciples reside in Crimson Stone Courtyard, they will all have to do manual labor, a sloppy old man said. Manual labor? The gray-robed Gongfeng said. Junior disciple Dongbua doesn't need to do manual labor. I've exempted him from it. Why not exempt us from manual labor? Every time we come, we have to perform labor. The intersect disciples at the side were all talking. The nominal disciples were more low-key, and they all called him Senior Brother Dongbua. The disciples of God Emperor had strict rules. The nominal disciples addressed the inner disciples as senior brothers and senior sisters. Inner disciples would also address personal disciples as senior brother or senior sister. Labor? Dongbush Shuang was puzzled. Junior brother Dongbo, every disciple usually has to do manual labor. The one in charge of this is senior sister Gongfeng. The sloppy old man beside him grinned. Dongbush Shuang watched from the side. He could also see that senior sister Gongfeng treated the ordinary juniors rather coldly. Only he and the two relatively young stage 3 world deities were polite to her. Through this banquet, Dongbush Shuang also got to know this group of disciples. Although he was highly sought after, on the surface, he was the weakest among them. He was the only deity. The next morning, a faint mist pervaded the air. Dongbush Shuang arrived alone at a tall tower at the corner of the crimson stone courtyard. The tower was so majestic that one could feel a boundless pressure just by looking at it. In fact, he even felt as though he had transformed into the world of the Xia people and was looking at the material world. This tower seemed to be formed from the superimposition of countless worlds. Just by looking at it, Dongbush Shuang understood that this sealed world tower was far more valuable than his own Crimson Rock Mountain. He truly deserves to be called the strongest expert in the deity world. His Majesty, the Bloodshed God Emperor, is truly unfathomable. Just a random sealed world pagoda placed here is already an incredible treasure. Shuang was inwardly startled. He then stepped through the pagoda door and entered. As an inner disciple, he could learn any world deity grade secret technique. His Majesty had left behind a total of 328 world deity grade secret techniques in the courtyard. This was many times more than what he had at Crimson Rock Mountain. However, whether it was Dongbush Shuang or the other inner disciples, none of them cared too much about world deity grade secret techniques. What they desired the most was absolute arts. Even if they managed to learn some bits and pieces of an absolute art, it would still be more powerful than a world deity grade secret technique. Every level of the sealed world tower contains a secret technique. When some of these secret techniques are combined, they can form a complete set of absolute arts. After entering the tower, Dongbush Shuang discovered many secret chambers. He casually chose a chamber and pushed the stone door open. The chamber was completely empty. 1. The stone door closed. Dongbush Shuang sat down cross-legged and took out a command token. This token was number 351. Let's begin. Dongbush Shuang immediately activated the command token. The command token immediately emitted a bright light. Hua, an invisible force immediately wrapped around Dongbush Shuang's consciousness, sending it directly into the world of the 351st level. Dongbush Shuang's eyes lit up. In front of him was a vast world. With a single glance, he could see countless sculptures scattered far away. Although they were very sparse, there were at least 1,000,000 of them in this vast world. Master said that if you have 2 tokens, you can go to the 95th and 351st level respectively to cultivate. So it's the descent of my consciousness. This is similar to the Bloodshed God Palace battle. Dongbush Shuang was enlightened. There was no danger in the descent of his consciousness. Dongbush Shuang looked around and saw that the sculptures in the distance were gradually waking up. The dirt and dust on their surfaces were also falling off. Dongbush Shuang stretched out his hand, and a spear on the ground flew into his hand. "Amen, what's that?" Dongbush Shuang's eyesight was extremely good. With a single glance, he could see that there were many mysterious patterns on a huge rock in the distance. Secret art? Dongbush Shuang immediately had a guess. He already knew that every level of the sealed world tower contained a secret art, and it was considered a part of an absolute art. Kill! Kill! The sculptures had all awakened, revealing their true appearances. Each of them was clad in thick armor, and wielded all sorts of weapons. All of them instantly moved, surrounding Feng Lin. Dongbush Shuang had already memorized the patterns on the huge rock in his heart. His heart was stirred, but at this moment, he still used his spear arts to deal with these sculpture warriors. He did not dare to hide his strength in the sealed world tower. He immediately summoned his 3 mirage bodies and activated his great chaotic true force. For a moment, his aura was ferocious as he welcomed the sculpture warriors. Shua. The first to arrive was a warrior wielding a long staff. He waved the staff fiercely, but his aura seemed to be very restrained. Pun! A mirage body's spear met the staff head-on. When the spear collided with the staff, the mirage body was directly sent flying. As it was sent flying, the other sculpture warriors also surrounded it. The mirage body did not have enough time to defend itself and was completely destroyed by an axe and a hammer. Boom, boom, boom! The sculpture warriors surrounded Feng Lin from all directions. In the blink of an eye, the mirage bodies were destroyed one by one. Dongbu Shui Ying's main body was still traversing through the mirage body, trying his best to escape. He even switched places with his mirage body. However, he only managed to last for 3 breaths of time. Pun! A blade pierced through the mirage body and struck Dongbu Shui. It seemed like an ordinary blade strike, but its power was completely concentrated into his body. Even though he was at the 3rd level of the time immemorial body, his body still instantly exploded. Dongbu Shui Ying's consciousness left his body. Who? The starry blue-robed Shui Ying, who was sitting cross-legged in the secret room, opened his eyes. Chapter 485. Activating the token in his hand, his consciousness was once again brought to the 351st level of the sealed world pagoda. A vast world. Countless statues remained motionless. When Dongbu Shui arrived, the statues began to awaken. South! Dongbu Shui soared into the sky and scanned his surroundings, intentionally searching for Dongbu Shui. Very quickly, he discovered other huge stones with pictures on them and memorized them one by one. At this time, the statue warriors began to surround him. Dongbu Shui also joined forces with his 3 mirage bodies to deal with one statue warrior at a time. Previously, he had lost too quickly. This made Dongbu Shui understand that once all the statue warriors surrounded him, he would not be able to resist at all. Thus, he had to quickly deal with one statue warrior at the very beginning, who the statue warrior's blades slashed down furiously. There were no strange phenomena, merely a flash of the blade. In just a single exchange, 2 of the mirage bodies were severely injured and dissipated. At the same time, Dongbu Shui Ying's main body and the last mirage body made use of this opportunity to attack with their spears. One of them executed the chaotic suppression while the other executed the star meteor annihilation. Hua! The spear's shaft twisted and spun, bringing with it the shadow of the star meteor annihilation. The spear brushed past the back of the statue warrior's blade and pierced into its chest. Its thick armor trembled slightly, and cracks could be seen on its surface. Pun! The other spear struck the back of the statue warrior. The statue warrior was sent flying, but it was not injured in the slightest. What? Not only are their attacks strong, but their defenses are also so strong? Dongbu Shui was shocked. Kill! After a short exchange of moves, even more sculpture warriors surged forward to surround Shui. Shui was almost instantly submerged. He relied on his mirage body to struggle at death's door, trying his best to observe the attacking techniques of these sculpture warriors. However, he only lasted 5 or 6 breaths of time before he was once again exterminated, and his consciousness returned. Dongbu Shui, who was sitting cross-legged in the secret room, nodded and said, "These statue warriors are using different weapons, but they are using the same secret technique. The secret technique is very powerful, which makes their moves seem ordinary, but they are actually much more powerful than any of my moves. This secret art has a faint hint of the chaos divine heart. Looks like cultivating in this world will help me grasp the divine heart of chaos." Dongbu Shui understood his master's intentions with the blood blade. In Dongbu Shui Ying's mind, his master, the blood blade, had transmitted some information to him. It was all about the chaotic whole deity heart and the world deity heart. Forget about the world deity heart. He had completely understood it after reading it once, because he had already grasped the world deity heart long ago. Thus, he focused more of his attention on carefully experiencing his master's teachings on the chaotic deity heart. On one hand, he was experiencing it while on the 351st level of the sealed world pagoda. As time passed, finally, he managed to collect the complete secret art from the huge boulders. Only then did he realize that the statue warriors were only using a portion of the secret art. They had not unleashed the full power of the secret art. If they were to unleash the full power of the secret art, he would not even be able to struggle. Furthermore, he was only using a portion of the secret art. Furthermore, he was fighting against Dongbush Shuang in close combat. This allowed him to experience the secret art even more closely. Battling was a learning process. If the learning process in the 351st level of the Sealed World Pagoda could be said to be slow and arduous, then the 95th level was completely different. This was a lush forest. Within the forest, Dongbush Shuang looked at his surroundings. Amidst the countless towering trees, there were many statue warriors. These statue warriors were also awakening. Similarly, amidst the towering trees, there were also many huge boulders. These boulders were engraved with many mysterious diagrams. Kill! The statue warriors had completely awakened. The first statue warrior stepped on the tree and transformed into a beam of light as it charged forward. At the same time, it lashed out with the long whip in its hand. Hua! The long whip flew through the air, but in an instant, it transformed into thousands of illusory whips that completely enveloped Dongbush Shuang, leaving him with no way to escape. Kill! Another statue warrior charged over. He instantly unsheathed his sword. The bewitching sword light directly arced through the sky. It was as if it was coiling around a finger. The sword light twisted and danced, similarly entangling towards Shuang. Kill! Another sculpture warrior waved his sledgehammer. The sledgehammer fiercely smashed towards Shuang from afar. Long, the place where the sledgehammer smashed produced countless black streams of air. Countless black streams of air enveloped Shuang and entangled him. All the statue warriors. All of them could attack from afar. Countless sword lights and saber lights wreaked havoc. Fortunately, there were only 10 statues attacking at a time. Thus, Dongbush Shuang was still able to put up a fight. The defense of the statue warriors on the 95th level was not considered strong. After killing one statue warrior with great difficulty, he only lasted for 2 breaths of time. Due to the omnipresent restraints, he could not even escape and rapidly died. World of the Xia people, within Crimson Rock Mountain. This is a secret technique? Dongbush Shuang had only entered the 95th level 12 times before he had completely memorized this secret technique. He had even begun to comprehend and learn it. It was just that within the Sealed World Pagoda, he still acted as if he did not know anything about it. After all, if he learned it too quickly, it would be too easy for others to see through him. Now is not the time to reveal the world deity heart, Dongbush Shuang thought. For the sake of caution, there is no need to inform my teacher. The safest secret. A secret that only a single person knows of. Even though he trusted his teacher, the Blood Blade, his enemies were from the Temporal Island. The Temporal Island, the Bloodshed God Palace, the Myriad God Palace. These were 3 superpowers that had enmity with each other, and there had always been conflicts between them. Assassinations, and even powerful existences killing each other were common occurrences. For a powerful existence from the Temporal Island to kill an inner disciple of the Blood Blade, this was a small matter. If they could kill a personal disciple of the Blood Blade, the Temporal Island would be delighted. Thus, he had to be cautious. Wait until I grasp the chaotic deity heart. At that time, I'll be a stage 2 world deity. Dongbush Shuang thought. By then, those powerful existences won't be able to kill me with a single thought. The only ones who can kill me are my teacher, the Temporal Island Lord, the Myriad God Palace Head, and a few others. At the level of the Myriad God Palace Head and the Temporal Island Lord, they would not lower themselves to deal with a junior. The only ones he had to be careful of were the other powerful existences. Powerful existences. With a single thought, they would be able to kill them even if they were hiding in the material world. It was pointless for Dongbush Shuang to hide anywhere. Even if he hid under the tutelage of his teacher, the Blood Blade, it would be pointless. Take it slow. Dongbush Shuang was a very patient person. His future was boundless, and he was not in a rush. Naturally, he would take things one step at a time. Nobody would be able to shake him or affect him. I'll first learn this secret technique. Dongbush Shuang stood alone under a large tree, the red leaves of the tree fluttering in the wind. With a spear in hand, he began to slowly display his spear techniques, comprehending the profoundness of the secret technique. Gradually, strands of air currents began to revolve around the spear. These air currents were extremely tough, and even a towering mountain would be crushed by these strands of air currents. The strands of air currents began to spread throughout the entire Crimson Dust Island. Countless strands of air currents traversed hundreds of millions of kilometers. If this were the sealed world pagoda, those statue warriors would most likely have been crushed to pieces in an instant. I've just begun to comprehend it, and I haven't mastered it yet. However, this domain-type technique is indeed exquisite. It goes in a different direction from the domain-type secret technique I created, the world prison, Dongbush Shuang thought. Having grasped the world deity heart for so many years, he had created a whole set of secret techniques based on the world deity heart. One of them was a domain-type secret technique, the world prison. It focused on suppressing and trapping enemies. But now, he had learned this secret technique from the sealed world pagoda. This secret technique originated from an absolute art, and it allowed Dongbush Shuang to see another direction. Hoo! Dongbush Shuang sat cross-legged under a large tree, his spear resting on his knees. He calmed his heart and began to comprehend. The countless air currents around Crimson Dust Island, which spanned over 100 million li, became increasingly condensed, as if numerous dragons were dancing in the air. Chapter 486. Within the white-robed Dongbush Ying's body, within the inner world. This lonely world spanned hundreds of millions of kilometers. Although there was land, forests, mountains, rivers, deserts, grasslands, plants, there were no living creatures. In the skies of this world, there were countless black water droplets forming a huge dark cloud. This was the great chaotic true force. Hong. In the depths of this vast land, there was a fiery red energy surging violently. This was Dongbush Ying's most fundamental power, world deity energy. At the core of this boundless world deity energy, countless runes converged to form a blurry three-dimensional diagram. After a large amount of world deity energy was converted, it would turn into a condensed stream of air. This secret technique is extremely complicated. My comprehension of the complete world deity heart is extremely deep, and I've even created an entire set of secret skills. Yet, it's still so difficult to cultivate. Deep underground, Dongbush Ying's huge illusory head could be vaguely seen. He was currently staring at the three-dimensional diagram in detail. Time continued to flow. The three-dimensional diagram became increasingly clear, and the countless runes continued to fuse with each other, forming a perfect whole. After a full 3 years, the three-dimensional diagram finally became clear. It was a black sphere. The countless runes eventually formed a very small black sphere. It looked ordinary, but in reality, it was extremely mysterious. This secret technique was much more mysterious than ordinary world deity grade secret techniques. Just getting started was already so difficult. Hua! The huge amount of fiery red deity energy was converted by the black sphere, turning into many small black spheres. The countless black spheres then formed chains. The long black chains collided with each other. I've succeeded. The white-robed Dongbush Shuang, who had been sitting under the tree for more than 3 years, stood up. One could only see black chains flying out from his body. Countless thin black chains weaved through the sky. If these chains were to bind the opponent, even if they managed to break free, the countless chains would continue to bind them. Shuang extended his hand and grabbed onto one of the countless shackles surrounding him. The shackles were cold and extremely tough. Under the restraint of these shackles, even my true body would only be able to display 50% of my strength. This is a mysterious secret technique I learned from the 95th level. Master didn't give me a name, so I'll call it World Chains for now. Dongbush Shuang thought to himself. If I combine this secret technique with my self-created secret technique, the world prison, I'll be able to increase its power. The world chains were similar to the great chaotic true force. It was a type of energy transformed from world deity energy. The great chaotic true force was powerful and tyrannical. On the other hand, the world chains specialized in binding. The world prison created by Dongbu Shuang was originally a technique that used the power of the world to suppress and restrain the target in a very mysterious way. This method of controlling the energy of the world was the secret skill world prison. Right now, I can use the world chain to suppress and restrain them. By controlling the world chains, the power of the world prison will be much greater than before. Dongbu Shuang laughed. A prison with chains is a true prison. He felt that his big brother, the White Sand City Lord, had created this terrifying secret skill, the White Sand of Annihilation. Although the outside world said that it was created from a combination of world deity secret techniques, Dongbu Shuang guessed that it was most likely a combination of the secret techniques of the sealed world pagoda and a lot of effort to finally create it. Only then could it display such a powerful might. The moment the White Sand of Annihilation appeared, most Stage 3 world deities would flee with heavy injuries. If they did not flee, they would only be able to unleash a portion of their strength. Because he had long since created this secret skill, he had only used the chains to display it. He had spent 300 years modifying the chains to create a new secret skill, the world prison. Now that this domain-type secret skill was unleashed, the countless black chains fused together, layer upon layer. Dongbu Shuang estimated that even if a Stage 1 world deity were to be trapped in the world prison, those who had some means of escape might still be able to survive. As for those who could not, it would already be quite good if they could unleash 20 to 30% of their strength. It's a pity that I'm weak in close combat. Dongbu Shuang shook his head inwardly. The world deity heart. He was most proficient in domains, and he had fused the secret techniques of the sealed world pagoda with his self-created domain-type secret skill to create such a tyrannical move. In terms of close combat, Dongbu Shuang estimated that he would only have half the combat power of those who had grasped the splitting heaven deity heart or chaotic deity heart. However, after creating the world prison, things were different. Every grade 1 deity heart had its own formidable aspect. The only thing that mattered was whether one could unleash it. Within the vast bloodshed god palace, within the crimson stone courtyard. Junior disciple brother Dongbu. Dongbu Shuang bumped into his senior disciple sister Gong Feng. Senior disciple sister. Dongbu Shuang greeted her. You've been a disciple of Master for 800 years, yet you've yet to grasp a grade 1 deity heart? Gong Feng asked. I can't help but feel that I'm still lacking, Dongbu Shuang replied. Gong Feng frowned. She was very clear that their master, God Emperor, believed that Dongbu Shuang would be able to succeed within 1,000 years, yet he had yet to succeed even after 800 years. Master is quite fond of you. Don't disappoint him, Gong Feng said with a frown. Junior disciple brother understands, Dongbu Shuang hurriedly replied. Amen. Go on then. You can continue with your matters, Gong Feng said. Dongbu Shuang immediately left and headed towards the sealed world pagoda. Gong Feng watched from afar with a slight frown. This junior disciple brother Dongbu seems to be quite serious in his cultivation. But master's judgment shouldn't be wrong, unless junior disciple brother Dongbu appears to be serious on the surface. But he's actually very lazy in his cultivation. Humph! If he's lazy in his cultivation because he's taken on master, that's simply too laughable. Gong Feng's eyes flashed with coldness. She looked down on those with low combat power. She would only be slightly polite to those who were strong and had a bright future ahead of them. As for the others, she looked down on them. Bloodshed God Palace, within a secret underground palace. An enormous scarlet-red cauldron stood about 50,000 kilometers tall. Flames raged within the cauldron, and even outside the cauldron, the temperature was incomparably high. Although the surrounding space had been reinforced, it was still faintly distorting. The temperature here was so high that ordinary Stage 4 world deities would be incinerated into ashes. A towering figure sat cross-legged in front of the scarlet-red cauldron. He was tens of thousands of kilometers tall just by sitting cross-legged. He was dressed in crimson robes, and his eyes were currently staring at the flames within the cauldron. One had to know that the temperature outside the cauldron was already so terrifying. The flames within the cauldron were even more terrifying, and they were most likely not any weaker than the ones in the deepest parts of the sun's star. Chi-chi! Within the cauldron, a strand of black energy could be faintly seen amidst the flames. Only by setting up arrays and relying on the cosmos cauldron can I occasionally form this strand of energy for a short period of time. Bloodblade's eyes were constantly staring at the cauldron as he muttered to himself in a low voice, "How exactly can I truly control and use it? Where exactly am I lacking in the Tao of destruction?" "Bloodblade, you've already obtained the cosmos cauldron and created an array." On Bloodblade's shoulder was a black bird. The black bird shouted out, "The cauldron will occasionally form that strand of energy. Bloodblade, you can observe it day in and day out, studying it in detail. Temporal Island Lord, Myriad God Palace Head, and the others might not even be able to grasp the direction even if they wanted to. Bloodblade, you've already seen this energy. The moment you break through, you'll truly reach a higher level. You'll truly be unparalleled, and you'll be able to completely surpass them." Currently, Bloodblade, Temporal Island Lord, and the others were all standing on the same level. Amen. Bloodblade smiled. "Even if I were to risk my life to obtain this cosmos cauldron, it would still be worth it." "Right, Bloodblade, I have to remind you that you've already accepted that Dongwu Shui-Ying as your disciple for 1,000 years. The blackbird said. "He has yet to grasp a grade 1 deity heart. The second chapter was almost here." Chapter 487. Today was the second chapter. The black bird bounced happily on the shoulder of the bloodshed god emperor. However, even in an environment that could easily incinerate stage 4 world deities, it was still completely unscathed. One could see just how terrifying it was. At this moment, it was bouncing proudly as it said, "Bloodshed, didn't you previously swear to me that I wouldn't be mistaken?" It even deliberately imitated the voice of the bloodshed god emperor. "Have you been slapped in the face? Have you lost face?" The black bird laughed strangely. "I told you not to be too confident. The future has yet to happen. Everything is possible." "He hasn't grasped a grade 1 deity heart?" Bloodblade frowned slightly. "It seems I overestimated him. He's not worth my grooming. Alright, let's not talk about him anymore." As he spoke, Bloodblade continued observing the scene within the cosmos furnace. He observed the strands of black energy formed by the convergence of the terrifying flames, trying his best to pry into the laws of profound mysteries and find a way to break through. "Oh," the black bird obediently replied. It was clear that God Emperor no longer cared about Dongwu Shui-Ying. This caused the black bird to sigh inwardly. What a pitiful fellow! It was clear. The bloodshed god emperor was a cold person deep in his bones. Having lived for so long, God Emperor had experienced and seen too much. Life and death were too common for him. He had accepted many disciples. These inner disciples and honorary disciples were all accepted in the past billions of years. After all, if one did not become a powerful existence, their lifespan was limited. If they did not die in battle, their true deity heart would crumble, or they would reincarnate. Over the years, God Emperor had accepted many disciples. He had accepted them whenever he wanted. If he did not want to accept them, even grade 1 true meaning transcendence would scram to the side. If they were worth grooming, he would properly groom them. If he felt that they were not worth grooming, he was too lazy to even look at them, throwing them to the back of his mind. After all, they were not worth his effort. He was the great Bloodblade. Time and energy were precious. Even for his two most successful disciples, Monarch Green and Monarch Guzang, he had given them opportunities and allowed them to develop as they pleased. He couldn't be bothered with them, as he was more focused on his own cultivation. This was also the reason why he was able to stand at the apex of the deity world. Deep in his bones, he valued his own combat power. As for the so-called bloodshed god palace, he did not care too much about it. Even his disciple, Monarch Green, had betrayed the bloodshed god palace because his disciple had his own path. Even though he was too lazy to care about it, he was still very happy to see his disciple grow strong. Territory? In fact, the management of the territory was left to his subordinates, Emperor Qianzhu and the others. Yes. Bloodblade reached out with his right hand, his palm crackling with destructive electricity. We share the same bloodline. You're clearly only one step away. Bloodblade raised his head and stared at the cosmos furnace, watching as a trace of dark power occasionally flashed in the raging flames. To this day, Dongbua Shuang had yet to learn the secret arts of the 351st level of the Sealed World Pagoda. Naturally, he had yet to grasp the chaotic deity heart. Too ruthless. He doesn't give us any face at all. Previously, we could still go to the neighboring garden for a stroll, but today, he actually chased us out. Within Dongbua Shui Ying's cavern dwelling, the Xia people and the deities were in the midst of a heated discussion. When Dongbua Shuang walked in from outside, they all hurriedly walked up to him. Dongbua, according to the rules, we can only move about in this cavern dwelling and that corridor in the Crimson Stone courtyard. Emperor Yunhai walked over with a frown. But in reality, the garden next door is a place where the servants and attendants of the inner disciples can go for a stroll. But today, we were chased out by the guards there. Dong Bo, that guard dared to treat us in such a manner. Could it be that His Majesty is dissatisfied with you? That's right. Dongbua, what happened? The Xia people and the deities looked at Dongbua Shuang. They were not fools. They were not angry at being chased out. Instead, they were worried that Dongbua Shuang might have lost the favor of His Majesty. A small problem. Dongbua Shuang smiled. It's nothing. Oh. Everyone exchanged glances and did not say anything else. Jing Qiu walked over and transmitted a message over. Dong Bo, what exactly happened? Even a guard dared to treat one of us like that? Perhaps my cultivation has disappointed Master. Dongbua Shuang transmitted. Don't worry. It's nothing. Be careful. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Jing Qiu transmitted consolingly. Suddenly, Junior apprentice brother Dongbua. A cold voice rang out from outside. Hearing this, Dongbua Shuang hurriedly walked out. At the entrance of the cavern dwelling stood a cold, gray-robed woman, Gong Feng. Gong Feng coldly said, In the future, properly discipline your subordinates. Servants and attendants know where they can go, and where they can't. I've already told you. Fortunately, you didn't trespass into a forbidden area. If you trespass into an important forbidden area, you'll be executed immediately. Junior apprentice brother understands. Dongbua Shuang was not angry. After all, strictly speaking, it was his subordinates who had violated the rules. It was just that everyone had tacitly agreed to it. The Crimson Stone courtyard was managed by Gong Feng. Now that her face had suddenly turned cold, it was clear that senior sister Gong Feng was very displeased with him. He had long heard that senior sister Gong Feng was a very cold person. She was still polite to those who were strong and had great potential, but she looked down on everyone else. The servants and attendants of Stage 3 world deities in the Crimson Stone courtyard were treated relatively lightly. Previously, he had also enjoyed special treatment, but now, he did not. Also, you haven't grasped a grade 1 deity heart even after cultivating for 2,000 years. You're so useless that you don't have the qualifications for me to exempt you from labor. Gong Feng coldly threw out a crystal token. In the Crimson Stone courtyard, you will have to undergo labor once every 1,000 years. Go and do your labor. Dongbua Shuang received the crystal token. Yes. There should be labor. Since Gong Feng wanted him to go, he had no way to refuse. In the mountains behind the Crimson Stone courtyard, Dongbua Shuang was currently chopping down a large tree with a huge axe. The trees were tall and majestic, and Dongbua Shuang used all his strength to chop them down. However, the trees were incomparably tough, and he only managed to chop down a single tree after an hour. Pung pung pung. The sounds of chopping could be heard, But Dongbua Shui Ying's heart gradually calmed down. Gong Feng did not like him at all. His master did not summon him again. Some of his fellow disciples were still polite, but they only discussed behind his back. Some of them were much colder when they met. This was the world of cultivation, where strength reigned supreme. Every year, he would get a portion of the 9 fruits for 1,000 years. Furthermore, he was personally guided by his master, and he cultivated in the sealed world pagoda. With such treatment, 2,000 years of cultivation was equivalent to 10,000 years of being a disciple of a powerful existence. His fellow disciples felt that Dongbua Shui Ying's potential was not that high. Naturally, their attitudes towards him changed. Pung pung pung. As the axe chopped down on the tree, Dongbua Shui Ying became even calmer. The corners of his mouth curled upwards. What others thought of him was their business. As long as he chose his own path and kept moving forward, there was no need for him to be confused. When he became more dazzling, countless people would be polite and respectful towards him. No wonder Master made the disciples do labor. During the labor, I had to use all my strength to chop down a single tree. Like this, there's no way for me to calm down and cultivate. But although my body is tired, my mind is very relaxed. Dongbua Shui Ying thought to himself. Perhaps it would be more beneficial for cultivation if I relax and work hard. Chapter 488. Time passed. Year after year passed. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3,300 years since Dongbua Shui Ying became a disciple of the Bloodblade sect. Within the chain of mountains behind the Crimson Stone Courtyard, Jing Qiu, the Dragon Mountain Emperor, and the Scarlet Flame Monarch were currently walking within the mountain range, observing and listening to their surroundings. Over there! Jing Qiu could vaguely hear something. So. The 3 of them rapidly flew over. Soon they saw a simple-looking black-robed Dongbua Shui Ying wielding a spear, stabbing it into a large tree in front of him. These trees had been nurtured by the unique environment of the Bloodshed God Palace, and they were not ordinary species. Even if Dongbua Shui Ying were to chop them down with his axe, it would take him an hour to do so. Using the spear to stab them, he could stab them for an entire day, yet the trees remained standing. Dong! 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 The spear stabbed out again and again, each time with a powerful force. Don't disturb him, the Scarlet Flame Monarch solemnly said. This time, Dongbua has been training his spear for 10 years. I'm afraid he must have made some progress. Jing Qiu watched from afar, revealing a smile. He's been training his spear for 10 years, and I didn't dare to send him a message lest I disturb him and destroy his cultivation heart realm. His true body is currently in closed-door cultivation, and I thought something unexpected had happened. Now that I know he's here, it's all good. What do you think is the point of stabbing the trees time after time? The Dragon Mountain Emperor muttered. I can't see what use it has. Of course you can't. If you could, you wouldn't be a middle-stage deity. The Scarlet Flame Monarch teased. The Dragon Mountain Emperor was speechless. Dongbua Shui Ying was feeling very comfortable. He was displaying his spear techniques time after time, his power reserved. Every single spear strike landed on the trunk of the tree. Whenever a tree fell, Dongbua Shui Ying would move on to the next. He could feel his cultivation heart realm changing. He could feel that he was getting closer to what he had always wanted, what he wanted to grasp. Thus, he was not willing to stop. So many years. He had been trying to comprehend the chaotic deity heart that Bloodblade had imparted to him. Time and time again, coupled with his many years of cultivation in the sealed world pagoda, he was getting closer and closer to breaking through that bottleneck. Ever since he started his labor service, he liked to use a big tree to practice his marksmanship. At this time, he was more relaxed, and when he relaxed, he would have a flash of inspiration. It was the same this time. While pondering the secret technique of the sealed world pagoda and attacking the tree again and again, Dongbua Shui Ying suddenly sensed something and entered a special state. He was overjoyed and completely immersed himself in it. Although he was arrogant and aloof when dealing with others, he still maintained the most basic level of courtesy on the surface. Everything was for the sake of balance, and this balance was something that came from his very bones. It was not as if he knew what his problems were and could instantly change his attitude. When he was immersed in comprehending that secret art, especially when he was stabbing the tree with his spear, his mind would become empty, abandoning all external influences and breaking through all shackles. His mind would be as clear as a blank piece of paper. As he pondered over that secret art in the 351st level of the Sealed World Pagoda, he gradually began to break through the bottleneck. When he finally broke through, he comprehended everything. No wonder the world deity heart is so much weaker than the chaotic deity heart in close combat. Donghua Shuang revealed a smile. The chaotic deity heart is the most fundamental form of abandoning everything. It is a form of complete destruction. Although they were in completely different directions. Even though they had all reached grade 1 deity hearts on different paths, they were ultimately similar. This was also the reason why it was so easy for him to fuse many grade 1 deity hearts together. After all, they were part of the most fundamental form of the laws of the world. Although the world deity heart is balanced and tolerant, it is precisely because everything should be tolerant. Even the most thorough destruction should be tolerated. The two grade 1 deity hearts in Donghua Shui Ying's heart rapidly fused together. It was extremely fast, and there were no doubts. In just a few breaths of time, the two grade 1 deity hearts had naturally fused together into a perfect whole. The aura around Donghua Shuang also began to change. It began to contain a deeper layer of laws of profound mysteries. He's broken through. Donghua has broken through. Jing Qiu, the Dragon Mountain Emperor, and the Scarlet Flame Monarch were all watching from afar. They could see that Donghua Shuang was in the process of breaking through, so they did not dare to disturb him. Within the Bloodshed God Palace, within a secret underground palace, an enormous scarlet-red cauldron was burning fiercely. Outside the cauldron, the huge figure of Bloodblade was seated cross-legged, observing everything that was happening within the Cosmos Cauldron. Master! A majestic voice reverberated throughout the palace. Amen? Bloodblade frowned. What's the matter? This majestic voice belonged to the treasure spirit of the entire Bloodshed God Palace. Although the Bloodshed God Palace was huge, it was still a complete treasure. The treasure spirit was able to observe everything that was happening within it. In fact, if anyone came to visit, Bloodblade would forbid his subordinates from barging into his cultivation grounds. The treasure spirit would be the one to inform him. The treasure spirit was the only one who was truly loyal to him. However, he had long since given the order not to disturb him unless there was something important. Master, you can take a look at your disciple, Donghua Shuang, the majestic voice said. Oh? Bloodblade was somewhat puzzled. He had great trust in the treasure spirit, and with a single thought, he had covered the entire Bloodshed God Palace with his consciousness. Naturally, he had discovered Donghua Shuang. He broke through? Bloodblade remained calm. So what if he had broken through? He had only become a stage 1 world deity after spending 5,000 years or so. But following that, Bloodblade frowned in disbelief. Stage 2? Chapter 489. Although Bloodblade had high standards when choosing disciples, he was quite capricious in accepting them. But he had indeed been accepting disciples. For example, the Myriad Flower Feast was his method of selecting disciples from the younger generation. The Myriad Flower Feast also gave many of the younger generation a chance to shine. Because Bloodblade was very clear that although he stood at the peak, he was still on the same level as the Temporal Island Lord, Myriad God Palace Head, and many others. He was strong in direct combat, but the Temporal Island Lord was the strongest in terms of space-time. No one could stop him. Thus, those who stood at the peak all had their own powerful methods. At this time, it was more important to have a good helper. He had spent a lot of effort on his disciples, Monarch Green and Monarch Puzong. The relationship between master and disciple was a very important bond. For example, although the Bamboo Mountain Prefecture Master was one of the 3 ancestors, if the Bamboo Mountain Prefecture Master were to stand at the peak in the future, he might not necessarily have a close relationship with the God Emperor. The stronger one was, the more unwilling they would be to submit. They would rely more on their emotions to influence others. Thus, Bloodblade had accepted many batches of disciples over the years, but most of them were accepted when they were in the mood. For instance, if their hearts were touched, even if their talent was lacking, God Emperor would still bestow them an honorary disciple. If they felt that they were not bad and could be groomed, he would accept them as an inner disciple. But in the process of grooming, he would gradually be disappointed because most of them could not even become stage 4 world deities. The number of disciples that could truly catch his eye were too few. And now, the Bloodshed God Emperor was pleasantly surprised to discover the appearance of an extremely talented disciple. What stage 2? Bloodblade, what are you talking about? The black bird on Bloodblade's shoulder asked in astonishment. Dongbu Shui Ying's true deity heart has already broken through. After his inner world evolves, he will become a stage 2 world deity. Bloodblade smiled. What stage 2? Wasn't Dongbu unable to break through and grasp a grade 1 deity heart? How did he become a stage 2 world deity all of a sudden? The black bird was startled. Soon after, it began extending its senses and discovered Shuiying in the middle of the mountain range. It could not help but exclaim, "It really is true. His true deity heart has already broken through, and he has only cultivated for 5,600 years. This cultivation speed is too terrifying. Let me think about it." The black bird bounced on Bloodblade's shoulder. In the history of the deity world and abyss, the fastest person to become a stage 1 world deity was Monarch Green, right? He took only 300 years to become a stage 1 world deity. The fastest person to become a stage 2 world deity was a crazy brat called Monarch Extermination, who reached stage 2 in 2,900 years. Unfortunately, he was too crazy, and his murderous nature was too heavy. He died too early and did not become a powerful existence. The earliest person to reach the third firmament was Manor Lord Feishue, who spent 53,000 years. The earliest person to reach the fourth layer was the Temporal Island Lord, who only took a little over 180,000 years. Other than Jumye, who died early, Monarch Green, Manor Lord Feishue, and Temporal Island Lord are all very powerful. The blackbird said. Bloodblade nodded. In terms of cultivation speed, he was slightly slower, but he was still standing at an extremely high position. This was also the reason why he was willing to give many disciples a chance. Let me take a closer look at his cultivation experience. Bloodblade gazed into the distance. The majestic power began to pass through the countless spatial obstructions. It even forcefully passed through the obstruction of the material world. According to the public information, only the temporal temple could break through the material world and easily reverse the flow of time. Even powerful existences could not do it. But in reality, breaking through the obstruction of the material world was extremely difficult. Most powerful existences could not reverse the flow of time within the material world. But those who stood at the very peak, such as Bloodblade and the myriad God Palace head, could still do it if they personally acted. Only the Temporal Island Lord was the most powerful. He did not even need to act personally. Just the treasure he refined, the Temporal Temple, was enough to do it. Hua. A formless power descended upon the world of the Xia people. The white-robed Dongwu Shuiying was currently within Crimson Rock Mountain. He was seated cross-legged within his cultivation room. His inner world was currently undergoing a transformation. Hong Long Long. The vast inner world, which originally spanned over 100 million kilometers, was currently rumbling and expanding. The land was extending in all directions, and the seawater was surging. Large amounts of energy were being absorbed and transformed. The land was originally devoid of air, and the trees in the forest did not grow or wither. But now, after fusing with the chaos whole law, the trees and plants began to grow. Countless cells within them were constantly being destroyed, and new cells were born. The trees and plants continued to grow, and when they grew to their limits, they gradually began to wither. After that, they would break out of the soil and grow once more. The entire inner world was constantly being destroyed and reborn. This cycle of life also produced gases and other substances. Air began to circulate. And then? Dongbu Shuang raised his head. He could feel a formless power seeping in. Master? Dongbu Shuang immediately recognized that this was the aura of his master, Blood Blade. Master is reversing the flow of time to investigate what happened in the past. As a territory lord of a material world, he naturally discovered what his master was doing. The Blood Blade's descending power was not considered strong. If Dongbu Shuang was willing, he could even forcefully repel this power. But knowing that it was his master, Blood Blade, he naturally did not dare to do so. This brat, he even accelerated time by 600 years. In front of the cosmos furnace, Blood Blade lightly nodded. Counting it like this, he became a Stage 1 world deity in 900 years and a Stage 2 world deity in 5,000 years. Even though he didn't break the record, he is still one of the strongest Grade 1 true meaning transcendents. The black bird on God Emperor's shoulder happily said. Monarch Green was extremely dazzling back then. He became a Stage 1 world deity in 300 years and a Stage 2 world deity in 3,900 years. Back then, Your Majesty, you spent quite a bit of effort, and even fought with the myriad god palace head before finally accepting Monarch Green as your disciple. Monarch Green was truly too dazzling back then. He was a transcendent the moment he was born, and his talent was outstanding. When he was a child, he grasped the embryonic form of a Grade 1 true meaning. Soon after, he grasped it and became a world deity in 300 years. One had to know that before this, the fastest person to become a Stage 1 world deity had taken 600 years, and that was achieved by the Temporal Island Lord. Yet Monarch Green had done it in just 300 years. Even those peak existences like Blood Blade were alarmed. They were all fighting to accept him as their disciple. The Temporal Island Lord had compromised. As for the myriad god palace head, he and Blood Blade had fought over this matter. In the end, it was Blood Blade who was more tyrannical and tyrannical. Monarch Green had become the disciple of Blood Blade. Blood Blade naturally put in all his effort to groom him. Monarch Green's current combat power was unfathomable. Congratulations, Master! Congratulations! The black bird hurriedly shouted. You've accepted such a good disciple so easily! It's too late for the myriad god palace head and the Temporal Island Lord to snatch him away. Ha ha! Blood Blade laughed. It's still too early. Back then, that brat extermination had also caused a commotion in the deity world and Dark Abyss. The two rulers of the Dark Abyss had personally acted to snatch him away, but his murderous nature was too heavy and he was too arrogant. In the end, he lost his life. Dongbu's cultivation speed is slightly slower than Monarch Green and Extermination's. However, what I like the most is still Dongbu's temperament. He's very emotional, yet neither arrogant nor rash. After going back in time, Blood Blade had long since understood everything. He had once taken Crimson Dust as his master. He was probably worried that Patriarch Black Fiend would kill him. Thus, he had always concealed this information. Even in front of me, he didn't reveal any information at all. Even though he was ridiculed by his fellow disciples because of this. He doesn't place his hopes on others. He has enough patience. Blood Blade was very satisfied. He liked those who were patient the most. That was because he was extremely patient. Step by step, he rose to where he was today. Crimson Stone Courtyard. Gong Feng was drinking wine by herself, her cold eyes staring into the distance. She had a cold nature, and hated weaklings the most. However, she was very obedient when dealing with experts. This was especially true when dealing with the God Emperor. Gong Feng was incomparably obedient and loyal. The God Emperor used her very smoothly. Go tell Dongbu to come here. The God Emperor's voice transmitted into her mind. Eh? Gong Feng opened her eyes and said respectfully, Yes, Master. She then stood up and walked out of the cave, releasing her domain to scan the entire Crimson Stone Courtyard. In her heart, however, she was puzzled. Why would Master look for Donghua? Logically speaking, Master should be quite disappointed in him. Could it be that Donghua broke through? Or does Master really like Donghua and wants to give him a few pointers? Amen. Teacher should like Donghua quite a bit, for him to be given 2 command tokens on his first try. Gong Feng had many guesses. However, she still immediately went to look for Donghua Shuiying. Why isn't he here? Gong Feng walked along the corridor, looking left and right. She had already scanned the area with her domain, but Donghua Shuiying wasn't in the Crimson Stone courtyard. At this moment, 4 people walked in from the back door of the Crimson Stone courtyard. They were Donghua Shuiying, Jing Qiu, the Crimson Flame Emperor, and the Dragon Mountain Emperor. The 4 of them walked in together. He finally appeared. Gong Feng frowned. With a single glance, she could tell that Donghua Shuiying was still a deity. He had yet to become a world deity. He still hasn't broken through? Gong Feng sneered in her heart. Junior apprentice brother Donghua! Gong Feng shouted coldly. Donghua Shuiying looked at her and instructed. Jing Qiu, you guys go back first. He then walked towards Gong Feng. He had just made a breakthrough in his deity heart, but the evolution of his inner world required a large amount of God crystals. It was impossible for him to foolishly carry out the evolution of his inner world in the middle of the forest. Initially, he was prepared to return to his cave dwelling and cultivate in his cultivation room, allowing his inner world to evolve and cultivate world deity energy. Without world deity energy, he couldn't be considered a world deity. Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng. Donghua Shuiying walked over. Why are you running around instead of cultivating? Gong Feng's eyes were filled with disgust. She said coldly, Master has ordered you to go over. Hurry up and follow me. Finishing her sentence, Gong Feng turned and walked ahead. Donghua Shuiying shook his head and followed behind. Thinking back to the power of his master's blood blade in the Xia people's world, he faintly understood why his master had summoned him. Chapter 490. A new chapter begins. Today is the first chapter. Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng walked in front. She was a stage 3 world deity after all. Even without turning around, she could still see everything that happened behind her. Donghua Shuiying shook his head and smiled, causing Gong Feng to feel angry. I just gave you a few instructions, and you still shook your head? Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng turned to look at Donghua Shuiying. Junior apprentice brother Donghua, are you provoking me? Donghua Shuiying replied coldly. Master has summoned me. If senior apprentice sister has any dissatisfaction, we can settle it privately after meeting with Master. Good, very good. Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng suppressed her anger. She did not dare delay the meeting with His Majesty God Emperor. However, Gong Feng was indeed very angry. In the entire Crimson Stone courtyard, because she had always been obedient, senior apprentice sister Gong Feng was the one in charge. Thus, all the honorary disciples and inner disciples had to give her face. From her point of view, this god realm Donghua Shuiying actually dared to disrespect her. She remembered this in her heart. You dare bare your teeth in front of me? Humph! Gong Feng led the way, while Donghua Shuiying followed closely behind. Soon, they arrived at a quiet and beautiful garden. The crimson-robed Bloodblade was standing with his hands behind his back, silently looking at the lake beside him. Master! Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng was extremely obedient. She said respectfully, I've brought junior apprentice brother Donghua. Master! Donghua Shuiying also bowed respectfully. Only then did the crimson-robed Bloodblade turn around. From the void, a black bird suddenly flew out. It stood on Bloodblade's shoulder and shouted happily. Donghua brat, not bad. You've hidden yourself quite well. Senior apprentice sister Gong Feng stood at the side, feeling somewhat puzzled. Hidden himself quite well? What did that mean? Master is wise, Donghua Shuiying said respectfully. Because of the threat of a powerful enemy, I've always been cautious. Bloodblade nodded and smiled. Not bad. His words caused Senior Gong Feng, who was standing beside him, to be shocked. What? Master actually smiled? How is this possible? She had served God Emperor for many years, so she knew very well how cold and aloof His Majesty God Emperor was. When he faced his disciples, he was usually expressionless. He rarely showed anger, let alone a smile. Even during the 10,000 flower feast, when facing so many powerful existences, Bloodblade would only occasionally smile when facing those with similar strength. He treated ordinary almighties coldly. Just like the time when Dongbu Shuang became his disciple for the first time, even though he was given 2 tokens, the Bloodblade was still very cold towards him. He quickly dismissed Dongbu Shuang without saying much. But this time, the moment he opened his mouth, he actually smiled. What's going on? What happened? Dongbu Shuang has hidden himself quite well. What is he hiding? Senior Gong Feng had some vague conjectures, but the moment she thought about how Dongbu Shuang had only cultivated for 5,000 years, she overthrew all her conjectures. You grasped a grade 1 deity heart after cultivating for 900 years. Bloodblade nodded lightly. Your talent is outstanding, yet you were able to endure until now, only revealing it after breaking through to stage 2 world deity. Even though you are young, your patience is not bad. This is a good thing. You might be able to cultivate by leaps and bounds now, but in the future, when your realm reaches a higher level and your cultivation path becomes more bumpy, when you meet with all sorts of troubles and setbacks, you will need patience. Yes, Dongbu Shuang said respectfully. You are also very cautious. Very good. On the path of cultivation, Master can't help you much. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Bloodblade was very satisfied with this disciple of his. Patience and cautiousness. These were the 2 strengths that Bloodblade was most famous for, and they were also the reason why he was so terrifying. Perhaps it was because he was proficient in assassination when he was young, or because he was very cautious and patient even when he was weak. Thus, his path of growth was steady and steady. Currently, in the deity world and Dark Abyss, one could say that Bloodblade had the greatest influence. His Bloodshed Tavern could be found everywhere in the deity world, Dark Abyss, and the material world. Even the most ruthless Abyss ruler of the Dark Abyss was willing to befriend him. Thus, Bloodblade was naturally very satisfied when he saw Dongbu Shuiying's cautiousness and patience. Have you heard of Monarch Extermination? Bloodblade asked. I've heard of him, Dongbu Shuiying replied. He became a stage 2 world deity in just 2,900 years, and his cultivation speed was far above yours. Unfortunately, he was too crazy, lacking caution and patience, and in the end, he lost his life. Bloodblade said. Take this as a warning. Yes, Dongbu Shuiying said hurriedly. By the side, senior disciple Sister Gong Feng listened in a daze. Monarch Extermination? Take this as a warning? This was practically comparing Dongbu Shuiying to Monarch Extermination. Becoming a stage 1 world deity in just 900 years. Only revealing it after becoming a stage 2 world deity? Cautiousness? Patience? This. Senior disciple Sister Gong Feng had never heard Bloodblade so attentively give pointers. Usually, when the God Emperor gave pointers to his disciples, he would just point his finger at them and tell them to scram. Dongbu, he's a stage 2 world deity. Even though senior disciple Sister Gong Feng was unwilling to believe it, the conversation between them was very clear. It was impossible for the mighty God Emperor to lie. How long has he been cultivating? Even a grade 1 true meaning transcendent would usually become a world deity within 3,000 years, and only become a stage 2 world deity after around 100,000 years. No, this Dongbu Shuiying is a grade 1 true meaning transcendent. Furthermore, he's extremely terrifying even amongst grade 1 true meaning transcendents. She had just heard that Dongbu Shuiying had grasped hold of a grade 1 deity heart in just 900 years. In the future you shall be my personal disciple, Bloodblade casually said. Yes, master. Dongbu Shuiying was somewhat excited. Even though he had already guessed it, as the master of Crimson Rock Mountain, He was very clear about the significance of his cultivation speed. However, it was truly too rare for the God Emperor to accept a personal disciple. In this generation, other than Monarch Gu Zhang and Monarch Green, his master did not have any personal disciples. He was the only personal disciple of a world deity. "Greetings, senior disciple." A voice came from the side. Dongbua Shuang glanced over. Senior disciple Sister Gong Feng was currently squeezing out a smile, appearing extremely respectful. The rules of the sect were very strict. Personal disciples, inner disciples, honorary disciples, there was a world of difference between them. The difference in status was also huge. "Gong Feng, you can withdraw first," Blood Blade ordered. "Yes." Gong Feng obediently withdrew. After leaving the courtyard, Gong Feng's heart was filled with unease. How could this be? How could Dongbua Shuang be so strong? How could this happen? As a personal disciple, Dongbua Shuaying's status in Crimson Stone Courtyard was second only to His Majesty. However, it was impossible for him to have the power to kill an inner disciple or honorary disciple. However, he had the power to punish them, and could easily force Gong Feng out of Crimson Stone Courtyard. One must know, Gong Feng was able to listen to God Emperor's orders, and was even in charge of managing Crimson Stone Courtyard. Her authority was still very great. Her status was much higher than that of a Stage 3 world deity's personal guard. Her clan had prospered because of her. If she were to offend a personal disciple and be chased out of Crimson Stone Courtyard, the people she had offended in the past and the powers her clan had offended would definitely take the opportunity to trample on her. What should I do? I have to think of a way to redeem myself. Gong Feng was extremely anxious. Dongbua Shuang respectfully stood in front of his master. Blood Blade waited for Gong Feng to leave before speaking. "As my personal disciple, I will not be biased towards anyone. You will also have the chance to obtain an absolute art." Dongbua Shuaying's eyes lit up. "Absolute art?" "This absolute art is extremely young and unyielding, and its sharpness is unparalleled. It is comparable to Monarch Green's absolute art, Mountain World," Blood Blade said. Dongbua Shuang was inwardly delighted. "An absolute art on the same level as Mountain World?" "Don't be too happy too early. The absolute art is imparted, but what you can achieve in the end is still up to you. I have accepted a few personal disciples over the years, but in the end, only Monarch Green and Gu Tsang became powerful experts," Blood Blade said. "Although Gu Tsang painstakingly cultivated the absolute art, the one I imparted to him was not inferior to Monarch Green's. However, his strength was far inferior to Monarch Green's." Dongbua Shuang nodded. "This disciple understands. Monarch Green, I imparted an absolute art to him, and he discovered another absolute art in the library. He grasped 2 absolute arts, but in the end, his highest achievement was only the Mountain World," Blood Blade said. "Although absolute arts are powerful, not everyone can master them, and not everyone can master them. Of course, the absolute art I imparted to you should be the most suitable one for you. The secret arts you obtained in the 2 levels of the Sealed World Pagoda were only a small portion of this absolute art," Blood Blade said. "This absolute art uses the world deity heart as a guide, and it can command other deity hearts. However, this absolute art cannot be imparted to you lightly. If you want to obtain it, you will have to pass my test," Blood Blade said. Dongbua Shuang understood that it was already good enough for him to obtain an absolute art through a simple test. "Master, may I know what the test is?" "It's very simple. In the mountains beside the Crimson Stone Courtyard, there is a prisoner imprisoned there. As long as you kill him, you will be able to obtain this absolute art." Blood Blade smiled. Star. Chapter 491. Blood Blade threw out a talisman. "Hold this talisman, and as long as you activate it, you will be able to enter the place where the prisoner is imprisoned. Otherwise, you will not be able to find him. This prisoner is not so easy to kill, but there is no need to be anxious. When you kill him, you will be able to learn that absolute art." "Yes," Dongbu Shuang received the talisman and replied respectfully. Bloodblade said, I need some of your blood. After saying that, an invisible force slashed at Dongbu Shuang's wrist, causing fresh blood to spurt into the air. Dongbu Shuang did not resist. At their level, bleeding no longer posed a threat to their lives. At most, it would consume some energy. In a short moment, the amount of blood in the air was like a small lake. Since you are my personal disciple, I will personally forge a blood-refined god weapon for you, Bloodblade said indifferently. With a wave of his hand, the lake of blood in the air was collected. Thank you, Master, Dongbu Shuang said. A blood-refined god weapon, a spear? Bloodblade asked again. Yes, Dongbu Shuang said respectfully. Because he cultivated the avatar technique, the two bodies would naturally have two blood-refined god weapons. Furthermore, the power of this spear would be even greater. After all, it was personally forged by the God Emperor. Naturally, it would be extraordinary. Cultivate well. After you kill that prisoner and obtain the absolute art, come and see me again, Bloodblade ordered. Dongbu Shuang immediately left respectfully. Bloodblade laughed after seeing his disciple leave. The black bird on his shoulder cawed. Bloodblade, you want Dongbu to kill that prisoner? That prisoner is not so easy to kill. Who knows, this Dongbu brat might only succeed after he becomes a Stage 3 world deity. Then let him obtain the absolute art when he becomes a Stage 3 world deity. It will be good for him to train, Bloodblade said indifferently. The more talented one is, the more he needs to be tempered. He's really unlucky to have you as his master, the black bird muttered. Bloodblade didn't argue with Blackbird. Following that, the surrounding space slightly rippled, and Bloodblade and Blackbird disappeared together, once again returning to the cosmic furnace in the underground palace. In the hall of Dongbu Shuiying's cave abode, the Xia people, as well as Jing Qiu, stared at the group of attendants in front of them with their mouths agape. The hall was filled with all sorts of rare treasures. There were even 10 myriad flower true fruits on display. At a glance, the value of these treasures was so high that it made them all tremble in fear. Not to mention them, even the White Sand City Lord would be speechless. What are you guys doing? Jing Qiu asked. We've been ordered by His Majesty to deliver these to His Highness Dongbo. The black-robed elder in the lead smiled and said, Don't you know? His Highness Dongbo has already been accepted as His Majesty's direct disciple. Direct disciple? Emperor Yunhai, Monarch Scarlet Flame, Monarch Sky Sea, the Dragon Mountain Emperor, and the others were all dumbfounded. Jing Qiu was in disbelief as well. They all knew that Dongbo had broken through, and it was normal for powerful existences to accept him as a personal disciple. But the Bloodblade, the strongest existence in the deity world, had a very high requirement for him to accept a direct disciple. Even Grade 1 true meaning transcendence would find it hard to become his direct disciple. At this moment, Dongbu Shuang walked in from outside. Greetings, Your Highness. These are sent by His Majesty. Also, if Your Highness has the time, please move to another cavern abode. The black-robed elder smiled. He wasn't overly respectful, but the guards and servants beside him were extremely respectful. And then? Dongbu Shuang looked at the elder. His aura was completely concealed. He couldn't sense it. He could only faintly feel an invisible pressure. This was a hidden expert from the Bloodshed God Palace, just like the black bird on His Majesty's shoulder. Thank you, everyone, Dongbu Shuang said. Since the items have been delivered, we'll be taking our leave. The black-robed elder smiled, turned around, and left with a group of guards and servants. The moment they left, the hall became noisy. Dongbu, you've become His Majesty's personal disciple? He actually called you Your Highness? Of His Majesty's disciples, only personal disciples are qualified to be called Your Highness, right? The Xia people and the deities could hardly contain their excitement. Dongbu Shuang nodded. Jing Qiu then asked, Snow Eagle, did His Majesty accept you as a personal disciple after you became a world deity? I've broken through to become a Stage 2 world deity, Dongbu Shuang said. There was nothing to hide. Since even Gong Feng and those servants knew about it, it was clear that God Emperor didn't intend to keep it a secret. Currently, only the Temporal Island Lord and Myriad God Palace Head were capable of killing him when he was weak. In reality, he had never heard of Blood Blade and Temporal Island Lord, existences who stood at the apex of the deity world and dark abyss, disregarding their reputation to deal with a little fellow. They were already standing at the true pinnacle. Even when the almighty beings under their command were fighting, they could still calmly watch. Hearing that Dongwu Shuang had become a Stage 2 world deity, the hall was silent at first, but then it exploded. Today's news was truly too much for them to bear. Ha ha ha, let's see if that Gong Feng still dares to be arrogant in front of Dongwu. She probably doesn't even have the time to cry now. Dongwu is too formidable. The hall was bustling with noise. Dongwu Shuang first moved to another cavern dwelling, then accompanied them for a celebratory banquet. He even gave them several treasures that would be of use to them. Towards a personal disciple, His Majesty God Emperor was truly generous. Shuang had only given them a small amount, but it was enough to cause the deities of the Xia clan to reject them. Every single one of them was given a total of 100,000 deity crystals, and they were not willing to accept any more. Jingqiu, I still need to go into seclusion to evolve my inner world. Unless it's an extremely important matter, don't bother with me, Dongwu Shuang said. Amen, all right. Jingqiu's smile was radiant. However, after Dongwu Shuang entered the meditation room, she fell into deep thought. Walking along the corridor, Gong Feng's heart was filled with hesitation. She was very clear that she had already reached a fork in the road. She had offended a personal disciple. If Dongwu Shuang wanted to deal with her, she would definitely not be able to stay here for long. Once the powers in the outside world knew that she had offended the personal disciple of Bloodblade, and that she was no longer serving God Emperor, her family would definitely be dealt a heavy blow, and her status would plummet. In the past, she had done a terrible job, and had offended many people. Trouble would definitely follow. He's a personal disciple, it's not a big deal to apologize to him. So be it. I just have to bear with it. Gong Feng gritted her teeth and persuaded herself. After all, she had been in a high position for a long time. Bear with it, bear with it. Gong Feng gritted her teeth, and hurriedly walked towards the cave abode. She knew that Dongwu Shuang had already moved to a new cave abode. When she reached the entrance of the cave abode, the Dragon Mountain Emperor was there, drinking wine. Go and pass the message, I want to see Senior Brother Dongwu, Gong Feng said. Now, all inner disciples and nominal disciples had to address Dongwu Shuang as Senior Brother. Oh? The Dragon Mountain Emperor glanced at her, and said casually, His Highness is in seclusion, and will not see anyone. You didn't even go and pass the message. Gong Feng's expression turned ugly. In the past, she wouldn't have cared about a mere servant. But now, she could only bear with it, because he was Dongwu Shuiying's man. You didn't hear? His Highness is in seclusion. The Dragon Mountain Emperor laughed coldly. Previously, when Gong Feng scolded Dongwu Shuiying in front of him, the Xia people could hear it from afar. After all, they were all divine spirits, and their vision and hearing were extremely sharp. They were also filled with anger. They hated this Gong Feng the most. All right, tell Senior Brother that I will come and pay my respects when he comes out of seclusion. Gong Feng forcefully held back her anger, and turned to leave. She was on the verge of going berserk. The Dragon Mountain Emperor laughed coldly at this scene, and then turned back into the cave abode to talk to the other Xia people about this matter. Within the quiet room, a fragrant aroma lingered in the air. The roof was octagonal, and there were 8 strange purple wood pillars as the main pillars. They emitted strange waves that filled the room, causing one's heart to feel ethereal. Dongwu Shuang sat cross-legged, and began to transform his inner world. Chapter 492. Within Dongwu Shuiying's sea of consciousness, a tiny person was sitting cross-legged. This tiny person was Dongwu Shuiying's soul, as well as his true deity heart. Currently, this tiny person was extremely tender and adorable. His aura was even more profound and powerful. Around him, the illusory image of the huge world had also become clearer. It revolved around the tiny person, and every action of the tiny person seemed to be filled with power. The world is me, and I am the world. Evolve. His deity sea had long been opened, and it had already reached the limits of the deity realm. Now, under the control of Dongwu Shui Ying's true deity heart, the vast deity sea began to undergo a huge transformation. The majestic deity sea immediately began to undergo a huge transformation. It was as if the world was being split apart, and the myriad existences were being born. The land began to extend, the mountains on the land began to bulge, the valleys began to form, and the grass on the plains began to grow. Thanks to the large amount of treasures provided by his teacher, including a total of 100 million deity crystals, Shuiying could absorb as many deity crystals as he wanted to transform his inner world. His inner world expanded all the way to a radius of 1 billion kilometers. How vast was it? Without a large amount of deity crystals, it would take a terrifying amount of time to slowly cultivate and absorb energy from the outside world. Long. Deep beneath this huge continent, a surging fiery red world deity energy surged. This world deity energy was even purer, and it contained the profound mysteries of the world chaotic whole. Dongwu Shui Ying's body was also undergoing a rapid transformation. His time immemorial body was easily raised to the 4th level, and his great chaotic true force was also easily raised to the 3rd level. The 5th level of the time immemorial body, and the 4th level of the great chaotic true force, should have been something Shuiying could have easily cultivated with his current realm, as long as he spent some time pondering over them. I'll come out of seclusion first. Dongwu Shuiying was not willing to go into seclusion any longer. He reckoned that his master should have already finished refining his blood-refined deity weapon. Furthermore, he wanted to see how strong the prisoner was so that he could make some preparations. After all, other than the world deity grade secret techniques he learned in Crimson Rock Mountain, he also had 2 secret techniques he learned in the Sealed World Pagoda. Comprehending them one by one would take a long time. First, he had to know the prisoner's strength, and then he could think of a way to deal with him. Ka. The door to the meditation room opened and Dongwu Shuiying walked out. Soon, he saw a maid waiting outside. Your Highness. At the same time, she sent a voice transmission to Jingqiu. Madam, His Highness has come out of seclusion. A figure in a light blue robe appeared outside the door. It was Jingqiu. Jingqiu smiled and said, This time, my seclusion time is quite short. Oh right, this is your blood-refined divine weapon sent by His Majesty. Hurry up and take it. This divine spear is too powerful. As he spoke, a crimson long spear appeared in his hand. The long spear exuded a terrifyingly high temperature, causing the space around it to distort. Jingqiu did not dare to touch it with her hands, but Dongwu Shuiying liked it from the bottom of his heart. Even his true deity heart was resonating with it. Come! Dongwu Shuiying beckoned with his hands. So, the scarlet spear flew over. Good heavens! Eastern Europe's snow eagle's eyes lit up as he held onto the spear. Who would have thought that it would be a high-grade world deity the moment it was forged? The blood-refined divine weapons of world deities were usually low-grade world deity the moment they were forged. After which, they would have to be nurtured by themselves. Blood Blade was clearly not an ordinary weapon. A high-grade world deity blood-refined divine weapon was even more valuable than a top-grade world deity weapon. This was because the power of a blood-refined divine weapon was naturally much greater. In the future you shall accompany me to conquer the deity world. Dongwu Shuiying smiled. With a thought, the scarlet spear in his hand disappeared as he entered his inner world. Deep underground in the vast land of the inner world, surrounded by countless fiery red world deity energy, the spear floated and was constantly being nurtured by Dongwu Shuiying's energy. On the same day, Dongwu Shuiying left the Crimson Stone courtyard alone and arrived at the mountain range. Over there, holding onto the talisman, Dongbu Shuang immediately sensed the direction. So, he turned into a ray of light as he sped towards his target. Piercing through the mountain range, his speed was extremely fast. Occasionally, he would pierce through space as he neared his target. Finally, when an array ripple appeared in front of him, Dongbu Shuang did not continue forward. Instead, he stood at his original position. Hua! Another starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang appeared beside him. One must know that with Dongbu Shuang's attainments in the deity world and deity heart, he was able to create 8 world bodies in a single breath. Currently, the strength of the prisoner was unknown. This time, he was only here to probe the other party's strength. Naturally, Dongbu Shuang would not risk his true body. The starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang grabbed onto the talisman and easily passed through the array ripple. Amen? The starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang's expression changed slightly. In front of him was a dark scene. In the middle of the darkness, there was a figure seated cross-legged. His body was also bound by 2 chains. According to the talisman, this is the place. And there is only one prisoner here. Dongbu Shuang looked at the prisoner. He is the prisoner I want to kill. You are finally going to kill me? The figure seated cross-legged said in a low voice. He raised his head, revealing 2 sharp horns on his forehead. His entire body was covered in black scales, and both of his hands were sharp like blades. A pair of scarlet eyes were filled with ice-cold killing intent. Abyss demon race? Dongbu Shuang immediately recognized that this was a creature from the dark abyss. However, this was a demon that had already reached the world deity realm. Using the description of the dark abyss, it belonged to the great demon god. Amen? You, a world deity in the second heaven, are here to kill me? The great demon god's scarlet eyes stared at Dongbu Shuang and sneered. What a joke! A joke? How would you know if you don't try? The starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang said. Scram! The great demon god roared. A terrifying sound wave spread out in all directions with the great demon god as the center. In an instant, it filled the entire dark region. The dark region rippled like the surface of a lake. Under the impact of the sound wave, the starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang's body rippled along with the lake and started to distort. He turned around and threw the talisman in his hand. With a whoosh, the talisman flew out of the range of the ripples of the formation. Following which, the starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuang's body was completely distorted. The great demon god sneered as he looked at the scene. Then, he closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. Outside the ripples of the formation, Dongbu Shuang's real body was dumbfounded. He had guessed that the prisoner might be very strong. Hence, he had carefully sent his world clone over. He never expected that a single shout would shatter his world clone. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. If he was slightly slower, he would have dropped the talisman. Whoosh! Dongbu Shuang waved his hand and the talisman landed in his hand. This power is too powerful. He is definitely a world deity in the third heaven. He might even be extraordinary among the world deities in the third heaven. Even if he was imprisoned, it would be very difficult to kill him. Dongbu Shuang was speechless. What does Master mean? Don't tell me that you want me to wait until I become a world deity in the third heaven before I can learn the unique skill? Asterisk asterisk. Chapter 493. Looking at the ripples of the formation, Dongbu Shuang's expression turned solemn. If I want to kill this prisoner, I'll have to use all my strength. South. He then turned and left. In the world of the Xia people, within a quiet room on Crimson Rock Mountain, the white-robed Dongbu Shuang was sitting cross-legged, muttering to himself. I need to accelerate time by 100 times. Although I won't be able to comprehend the laws of the heavens and earth at this rate, studying secret techniques and secret skills won't be a problem. The flow of time in the quiet room immediately increased, and one could even feel the laws of the heavens and earth distorting. Fortunately, if it were any faster, it would not be suitable for cultivation. I need to raise my strength to the limit. Under 100 times the flow of time. The white-robed Dongba Shuang began to calm his heart and ponder. First, he had to raise the time immemorial body and great chaotic true force, which were relatively easier. Next would be the secret techniques of the sealed world pagoda and self-created secret skills. After all, the later stages would be even more difficult. He had to raise his strength in all aspects. Otherwise, Dongba Shuang would not have the confidence to kill the prisoner. The black-robed Dongba Shuang flew back from the mountains and walked through the back door of Crimson Stone Courtyard. Apprentice Brother Dongba. Greetings, Apprentice Brother Dongba. At the back door, there was a group of inner disciples who took the initiative to greet him. Most of them were Stage 1 or 2 world deities. The ones leading them were 2 Stage 3 world deities. When the Stage 3 world deities faced Dongba Shuang, they all respectfully called him Apprentice Brother. This was because they knew that Dongba Shuang had become a Stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. It would not be long before he caught up to them, and perhaps even surpassed them. Furthermore, the personal disciples of the God Emperor usually grasped absolute arts. They could not be viewed as ordinary world deities. Why are you all here? Dongba Shuang asked. Apprentice Brother is now a personal disciple. As your juniors, I naturally have to come and congratulate you. A thin golden-robed man said with a smile. We've already prepared a banquet. Senior Apprentice Brother, some of your relatives and friends have already gone to the banquet. The other disciples also said enthusiastically. However, some of them were filled with regret, who would have thought that this Dongba Shuang would be so powerful. He's definitely one of the top transcendents in the history of the divine world, and his future is limitless. I didn't know if he held a grudge against me for being cold to him before. Dongba Shuang nodded. Lead the way. Back then, when he had not revealed his true strength, some of his fellow disciples were gossiping about him behind his back, and some of them were cold to him. Dongba Shuang was clear that he would naturally get close to those who treated him well. As for bearing a grudge, that wasn't to the extent of it, because other than Gong Feng, who had scolded them multiple times, the other disciples weren't that despicable. In the hall, surrounded by his fellow disciples, Dongba Shuang naturally sat on the main seat. Beside him was his wife, Jingqiu. Following which, the disciples sat down one by one. Senior Apprentice Brother. Senior Apprentice Brother Dongba. A large group of disciples rushed into the hall, all of them bowing respectfully. The one leading them was Gong Feng. At this moment, Gong Feng's face was full of smiles as she said, Senior Apprentice Brother Dongba, we've been waiting bitterly at the main entrance. But who would have thought that Senior Apprentice Brother would enter from the back door? We've missed our chance to welcome Senior Apprentice Brother. We're truly ashamed. Senior Apprentice Sister Gong Feng flattered him like this. How rare! Everyone take a seat. Dongba Shuang said. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother. Everyone took their seats. Senior Apprentice Brother Dongba is now a personal disciple, and there's hope for him to become a powerful existence in the future. This junior apprentice brother has nothing else to offer, and can only offer this meager gift to congratulate senior apprentice brother. These 2 mischievous stones are something I obtained by chance, and they're extremely beneficial to the true deity heart. A Stage 2 world deity honorary disciple who was seated at the back stood up. A plate appeared in his right hand, upon which 2 peculiar yellow stones were placed. He then passed it to the maidservant behind him. The maidservant took it and quickly walked from the back to a table near Dongba Shuang. Dongba Shuang raised his eyebrows. These 2 yellow divine stones were worth 5 million deity crystals. This was quite generous. This nominal disciple was called World Deity Hao Hui. This junior apprentice brother has some meager gifts to offer as well. At that moment, the other honorary disciples came forward with their gifts. If the gift was valuable enough, they would even introduce it. However, these honorary disciples were relatively weak, especially those Stage 1 world deities. Even if they wanted to give such a valuable gift, they couldn't afford it. One by one, they came forward with gifts. Snow Eagle, your junior apprentice brothers and junior apprentice sisters' gifts are quite valuable. Jingqiu transmitted with a smile. They're from the same sect as you, and now that they're giving you such a valuable gift, if they were to come to you in the future, I'm afraid you won't be able to reject them. If it's just a small matter, there's nothing wrong with helping a fellow disciple. As for the bigger matter, you'll have to think about it carefully. Dongbu Shuang transmitted back to his wife. As for his fellow disciples, they reckon that, with senior brother Dongbu's cultivation speed, he would probably become a stage 4 world deity in 1,000,000 years. To a world deity, this was an extremely short period of time. As a stage 4 world deity personally taught by His Majesty, possessing an absolute art and overwhelming strength, as well as being a lord of a material world, Dongbu Shui Ying's future position would definitely be above that of monarch Mo Shui and the Calm-Sea Prefecture Master. For such a future overlord, it was best to quickly seize the opportunity to befriend him with gifts. Otherwise, Dongbu Shuang would not even be interested in such a small gift in the future. The gifts were sent one after another, starting with honorary disciples, followed by inner disciples. First were Stage 2 world deities, followed by Stage 3 world deities. Gong Feng waited until the very end before standing up. She smiled faintly, revealing a rare hint of femininity. Her posture was also very humble. Senior brother Dongbu, junior sister has also prepared a few gifts. As she spoke, a long plate appeared in her left hand. This plate contained a total of 5 treasures. This is a top-grade cold star stone that originated from the moon star. The moment Gong Feng opened her mouth, it was obvious that these treasures were not ordinary. They came directly from the moon star. This is a demon heart left behind by a demon monarch from the dark abyss. This is just 5 treasures, but they added up to nearly 100 million deity crystals. The other disciples of the same sect added up would only be about the same amount as her. Firstly, Gong Feng's status was high, and she had accumulated many treasures over the years. Secondly, she was truly afraid of being chased out of the Crimson Stone courtyard. Hua! A black-robed old man suddenly walked in from outside the hall. Behind him were 2 Stage 3 world deity guards. After the black-robed old man walked in, he coldly said, "Gong Feng, according to the orders of His Majesty, from today onwards, you are no longer required to be the manager of the Crimson Stone courtyard." Ah! Gong Feng was stunned. If she was no longer a manager, she would no longer have any reason to meet with God Emperor. She would no longer be special compared to the other inner disciples. "It's you!" Gong Feng fiercely turned her head to look at Dongbu Shuang. Her expression was somewhat malevolent. "Dongbu Shuang, you were the one who complained to Master, right?" Dongbu Shuang frowned. "Didn't I just offend you a little? You're actually so vicious. Who asked you to hide your strength? If you didn't hide it, would I have treated you like this?" Gong Feng was incomparably furious. She had forgotten that if Dongbu Shuang were to be publicly exposed and killed by Sacred Master Crimson Dust's enemy, Forefather Black Devil, with a single thought, would she pay with her life? So what if I've become a personal disciple? I'm still a Stage 3 world deity, and I'm even a 4th-rank world deity in the Bloodshed God Palace. With a flip of her hand, the long plate disappeared. You don't have the qualifications to obtain my treasures. Indeed. Gong Feng's position within the Bloodshed God Palace was relatively high. Even Stage 4 world deities could not casually kill her, so Dongbu Shuang could not do anything to her. Everyone had sent their treasures because they knew that it wouldn't be long before Dongbu Shuang became a superpower in the deity world. You're right. Dongbu Shuang sat on the highest seat. Looking down at the impudent Gong Feng, he nodded. I was the one who told Master and caused you to lose your position. It's you, it's really you. Gong Feng's expression was savage. You've offended me with your insolence, haven't you? Dongbu Shuang said coldly. Gong Feng was startled. The black-robed old man beside her nodded. An inner disciple who offends a personal disciple should be punished severely. Within the sect, personal disciples, inner disciples, and honorary disciples were divided into 3 ranks. The hierarchy was very strict. Just give her 100 lashes, Dongbu Shuang said coldly. Chapter 494. Within the hall, including the black-robed old man, a total of 4 world deity guards quickly surrounded Gong Feng. They were all Stage 3 world deities. The Crimson Stone Courtyard was a rather special place. There were quite a few Stage 3 world deity guards here. You dare! Gong Feng could not believe it. Pull her away, Dongbush Shuang coldly said. He could no longer be bothered with Gong Feng. He did not like messing around, but now that he had met such a person, Dongbush Shuang would not show any mercy. Let's go, world deity Gong Feng. You can't be thinking of resisting, right? The 4 world deity guards looked at Gong Feng. Gong Feng stared back at Dongbush Shuang, her eyes filled with anger, but she did not dare to resist. Whipping, every lash was a pain that pierced the soul. Dongbush Shuang did not care about Gong Feng at all. He was more concerned about his own strength, and wanted to obtain the absolute art that all powerful existences coveted. Only those who were lucky enough to become a personal disciple of Blood Blade would have the opportunity to obtain an absolute art. Otherwise, if he wanted to learn an absolute art, it would really be too difficult. In his opinion, only with great power could one's influence be unshakable. Someone like Gong Feng, who relied solely on her official position, would be gone just like that. Of course, since many world deities could no longer advance, it was not wrong to seek a higher official position. Dongbush Shui Ying's true body and avatar were both cultivating in Crimson Rock Mountain and Crimson Stone Courtyard respectively. They were both under 100-fold time acceleration as they focused on their comprehension. His time immemorial body had easily reached the 5th level, and his survivability had undergone a qualitative transformation. He believed that if he were to meet that prisoner again, his body would not be destroyed by a single roar. His great chaotic true force had also reached the 4th level, and his strength had skyrocketed. Of the 2 secret techniques he learned in the Sealed World Pagoda, one was called the World Chains, or Shackles Technique for short. The other was called the Herculean Technique by Dongbush Shuang. This Herculean technique was similar to the World Deity Grade Secret Technique, the Great Chaotic True Force. Both used the Chaotic Deity Heart as their foundations, but it was much more profound. Both specialized in strength. This Herculean technique from the Sealed World Pagoda was similar to the Great Chaotic True Force. In fact, it was even stronger. Hence, he could give up on the Great Chaotic True Force. Hua! Within the inner world. In the sky above the huge continent, there was a huge dark cloud. This dark cloud was formed by the water droplets of the Great Chaotic True Force. This piece of dark cloud would only become less and less as Shuang gave up on it. At the side, there was an even more majestic dark cloud. This dark cloud surged violently, and there were countless black snakes moving within it. This was the Herculean technique. The Herculean art was very similar to the Great Chaotic True Power. However, the water droplets of the Herculean technique did not form streams of water. Instead, they fused together to form black snakes that resembled black whips. In terms of pure strength, the Herculean art was more than twice as powerful as the 4th level of the Great Chaotic True Force. With strength, I should be able to threaten that prisoner's life, Dongbush Shuang thought. However, I still have to improve my understanding of the laws of profound mysteries, and create an even more powerful secret skill. The first was a domain-type secret technique, the world prison formed by the chain technique. Now that he had become a Stage 2 world deity, this secret skill naturally had to be improved further. Within the quiet room of Crimson Stone Courtyard, the black-robed Dongbush Shuang who was sitting cross-legged was surrounded by countless thin and long black chains. The black chains covered the entire quiet room, swimming around and attacking in a certain direction. Layers upon layers of chains intertwined with each other. This quiet room was also maintained at 100 times the normal speed of time. As a personal disciple of God Emperor, the conditions of this quiet room were even better than those at Crimson Rock Mountain. This cultivation session lasted for 3,000 years. Of course, due to the time acceleration, only 30 years had passed in the outside world. Amidst a chain of mountains near Crimson Stone Courtyard, Dongbu Shuang flew through the air with a calm expression on his face. The 3,000 years he spent in seclusion had allowed him to improve his secret skills to their limits in a short period of time. Even if he wanted to improve them any further, his power would still be limited. This time, I've cultivated for 3,000 years, and my usage of the laws of profound mysteries has reached a new height. Moreover, with the 2 secret skills from the sealed world pagoda, I should have some hope. Dongbu Shuang soon saw the ripples of an array in front of him. His eyes flashed with a hint of killing intent. He had to give it his all. He had to succeed. With the talisman in hand, he directly entered the array. After entering, he saw nothing but darkness ahead of him. It was so gloomy that there were no signs of life. There was only a prisoner whose arms were bound by 2 shackles. That prisoner was sitting cross-legged with his head lowered. At this moment, he slowly raised his head to look at Shuang. His face was covered in black scales, and his scarlet eyes were filled with suppressed anger. "It's you again?" This imprisoned great demon god's voice was low. After that, he roared furiously. "Scram!" Just like the previous time. A terrifying sound wave instantly blasted against the surrounding area of darkness, causing the surrounding area to ripple like the surface of a lake. Dongbu Shuiying's area was also rippling. However, as the ripples spread, countless black chains appeared around Dongbu Shuiying's body. The black chains also spread rapidly, enveloping the entire area of darkness. The black chains were incomparably tough, and the sound wave was unable to destroy them at all. Under the cover of the countless chains, the sound wave's power was greatly reduced. When the sound wave reached Dongbu Shuiying, who had already reached the 5th level of the time immemorial body, it was not even worth mentioning. Let alone being greatly weakened, even if it wasn't weakened at all. His current body was not something that could be destroyed by this sound wave. Interesting? The great demon god raised his head and scanned his surroundings. Dang, dang, dang. Countless black chains were densely packed, covering every inch of the area. As they collided with each other, metallic sounds could be heard. These black chains also swam around the great demon god's body, not binding him at all. "Brat, are you really here to kill me?" The great demon god sneered. "I have been tortured by your deity world for so many years, and have had enough of it. I am also waiting for you to kill me. But you, a mere stage 2 world deity, are here to deal with me? Isn't that too laughable? I am here to kill you." Dongbu Shuang nodded. "However, I am very curious. You are the great demon god of the dark abyss. Why are you imprisoned here?" "Humph, I'm not afraid to tell you." The great demon god sneered. "Who asked your deity world to be so benevolent? There are so many living beings living peacefully on so many planets, yet I had to slaughter countless lives in order to cultivate the Blood Sea demon body. Every place in the dark abyss has a lord, and every world has a sovereign. TSK, the deity world is vast, and it is not easy to find me wherever I hide. I wantonly slaughtered and slaughtered, devouring countless flesh and souls, gradually forming a blood sea. Unfortunately, just as I was planning to retreat, I was discovered by a stage 4 world deity. How unlucky! Still, since I dared to come to the deity world, I had already made my preparations. It's just that I did not expect that your powerful existences would actually act to destroy my true body, imprisoning this avatar of mine here. Isn't it just slaughtering the lives of a few starfields? What does it mean to the entire deity world? How is it, brat? Are you angry? Come, do your best." The great demon god sneered. He did not care about death in the slightest. When he was imprisoned, he already understood that he would die without a doubt. Dongbu Shuang watched on coldly, too lazy to say anything. *******. Numerous starry blue-robed figures of Dongbu Shuang appeared in the dark area. There were a total of 9 starry blue-robed Dongbu Shuiyings. Including the true body, there were 10 of them. This was also because Dongbu Shuiying's attainments in the world aspect was higher. Currently, the number of world bodies that he could manifest had naturally reached the limit, with a total of 9 of them. The true body and the 9 world bodies were scattered in different directions, each holding a spear in their hands, staring at the seated great demon god. Kill! Black-robed Dongbush Shuang gave the order. Hua 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 the countless black chains that were swimming around the great demon god's body suddenly stacked up, and mysteriously wrapped around the great demon god, completely wrapping him up. The 9 world bodies immediately attacked with spears in their hands. Chapter 495. The prisoner, the great demon god, sat there cross-legged, not moving at all. There was a cold smile on his face as he allowed the countless black chains to bind him. One spear after another pierced towards him from different directions, piercing through the tiny gaps left behind by the black chains. Each of the starry blue-robed Dongbush Shuang used the Herculean technique, causing energy to surge within their bodies. The spear tip pierced the great demon god's body. Chi! Sparks flew from the great demon god's black scales, and the spear tip only left a white mark. What? Dongbush Ying's heart trembled. His strength had increased in all aspects, especially with the 2 secret techniques from the sealed world pagoda. He could be considered one of the strongest stage 2 world deities, but he still could not break through the scales of the great demon god. Master, oh master, the prisoner you chose is simply too powerful. The great demon god continued to sit cross-legged, too lazy to move. He opened his eyes, and his scarlet pupils pierced through the black chains. He could still clearly see the black-robed Dongbush Shuang in the distance. He said in a low voice, "Brat, don't waste your energy with this little bit of strength." "Is that so?" In the distance, the black-robed Shuang held a scarlet-red spear in his hand. With a sudden spin, the spear streaked across the sky, bringing with it a mysterious might as it pierced toward the great demonic god. This scarlet spear was a blood-refined deity weapon forged from the blood blade. Dongbush Shuang named it Scarlet Cloud. This was to commemorate the Scarlet Cloud Mountain world, to commemorate the group of good friends of the Xia people, and also to remind himself that no matter how high he stood, he should never forget his original heart. The Scarlet Cloud's spear's might was ferocious. But as it streaked across the sky and neared the great demon god, it suddenly disappeared without a trace. Pooh! When it reappeared, the Scarlet Cloud's spear had already entered the body of the great demon god. This wasn't extreme piercing, but rather the utilization of the profound mysteries of the world. The world was him, and he was the world. Ha! The great demon god laughed out loud as he exerted strength in his arms. Pun, 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 countless chains directly broke apart. He laughed heartily as he looked at the distant black-robed Dongbush Shuang. The Scarlet Cloud's spear had pierced through his chest, but there was a terrifying force pushing against it. Dongbush Shuang was unable to suppress it no matter how hard he tried. The spear was directly pushed out of the wound, but the wound quickly healed, and there was no damage at all. "I'm cultivating the Blood Sea Demon body. Although it's not complete, it's still at an extremely high level." The great demon god sneered. "With the Blood Sea Demon body, my body is like a sea of blood. You stabbing my scales is no different from stabbing my insides. If it weren't for the fact that I'm trapped here and unable to break free, I would have killed you with a single slap. Brat, you can't hurt me at all. You'd better scram and stop bothering me." Dongbush Ying's face turned cold. He also felt that although the spear had pierced through the great demon god's insides and pierced through some of his internal organs, not even a single particle had been destroyed. Not even a single particle had been destroyed. In other words, this great demon god did not even consume a single bit of energy. Those who had cultivated the undying body, as long as the particles were not destroyed, they would be unkillable. Only when the particles were destroyed would there be a chance of killing them. Blood Sea Demon body? There's no difference between stabbing your scales and piercing your insides? Dongbush Shuang nodded his head lightly. Very good, then I'll stab your scales. Whoosh! The spear instantly turned into a revolving scarlet vortex, and the surroundings seemed to be filled with the scene of the world collapsing. This was the secret technique with the strongest penetrative power that Dongbush Shuang had created. The great demon god's arms were bound by 2 chains, but he still stood there coldly, not even bothering to block the attack. He allowed the scarlet vortex to turn into a single point and pierce into his chest. The scales on his chest instantly shattered, revealing the muscles within. The spear only stopped after piercing into the muscles, and purplish blood flowed out from the wound. You can actually injure me? The great demon god revealed a look of shock. Although the wound was not big, the scales and muscles on his body had been completely destroyed, and his energy had been consumed. Under normal circumstances, he would naturally not be afraid of it. However, he was currently imprisoned, and the world deity energy in his body had been sealed. He could not even release a single strand of energy. Even his true deity heart was suppressed, and he was unable to activate his domain. The only way he could fight was to rely on his body to fight in close combat. Thus, he could only rely on the life force of the Blood Sea demon body to replenish his energy. Although his life force was extremely tyrannical, if he continued to exhaust it, it would eventually be exhausted. I really thought that I wouldn't be able to injure you. Clearly, you aren't that powerful. A sharp light flashed in Dongwu Shui Ying's eyes. Die. So. Immediately, 9 starry blue-robed Dongwu Shui Yings charged forward. Countless black chains appeared from within the Gloom domain, binding and restricting the movements of the great demon god. Scram. The great demon god no longer dared to use his body to block the attacks. With a wave of his hand, the countless black chains enveloping him shattered. Pung. The 9 world bodies brandished their spears at the same time, displaying their strongest secret skill. As the spears moved, it was as though a vast world was pressing down on him. If it was just a single world body attacking, it would have been fine. However, a total of 9 of them were executing such a powerful move at the same time. Their combined power was comparable to that of a stage 3 world deity. Pun! With 2 chains binding him, the great demon god was unable to dodge at all. The only thing he could do was to move within a small area of 10 meters. The 9 spears furiously lashed at his body from the same direction. The great demon god's legs were directly lashed off the ground. After flying for 7 or 8 meters, he was stopped in midair by the 2 chains. Pooh! The black-robed Shuang took advantage of this opportunity to strike out with his spear. The scarlet cloud spear once again brought along the might of the world collapsing and shattering as it pierced the great demonic god's back. The scales on the great demonic god's back immediately exploded and shattered, leaving behind a wound. Damn it! The great demon god was enraged and began to resist with all his might. Stop struggling. It's useless. Accompanied by Dongwu Shui Ying's voice, the 9 starry blue-robed Dongwu Shui Ying once again attacked in a frenzy. Countless black chains once again interfered. The weapons of the world bodies were ultimately not as sharp and powerful as the Scarlet Cloud's spear. However, if it was a strength-based suppression, the difference would not be that great. The spears lashed out furiously, causing the great demon god's figure to become unstable. After all, it was difficult for 2 hands to fight against 9 spears. Moreover, there were countless chains interfering. The 9 world bodies interfered to create opportunities, while the true body wielded the Scarlet Cloud Spear. The Scarlet Cloud Spear traversed several kilometers, taking the opportunity to stab at the great demon god's body time and time again, causing the great demon god to suffer injuries time and time again. Ah! The great demon god was incomparably furious. He had cultivated the Blood Sea demonic body to a certain extent, and stood at the peak among Stage 3 world deities. However, because his true deity heart was suppressed, his world deity energy was sealed, and he was even imprisoned, he was actually being bullied by a Stage 2 world deity. Since you dare to force me, then come at me. The great demon god went berserk. Arms actually began to grow from his armpits. Finally, they turned into 8 arms. The great demonic god stood at his original position, brandishing his 8 arms, easily blocking the 9 spears. Although he was unable to mobilize his world deity energy, the speed at which he brandished his arms was still very fast with just the power of his demonic body. Chapter 496. Pung pung pung. The great demonic god's 8 arms were very casual when he blocked the attacks of the 9 world bodies, slapping them away casually. After all, the 9 world bodies did not have any blood-refined divine weapons, and could not harm the great demon god. The great demon god only needed to focus on blocking the Scarlet Cloud's spear. For a moment, no matter how Dongwu Shuang attacked, he could not harm the great demon god in the slightest. You are unable to use your world deity energy, and growing 6 extra arms must have consumed a lot of your life force. Dongwu Shuang stopped. Yes, it consumed my life force. The scarlet eyes of the great demon god were filled with rage as he stared at Dongwu Shuang. I am imprisoned here, unable to replenish my energy, so I have to save every bit of my life force. But you forced me to do this. Although growing 6 extra arms consumed a lot of my life force, I only need to maintain them. The life force required to maintain them is very little, and it is not difficult for my blood sea demon body to last for 100 million years. Dongwu Shuang was silent. He knew that the great demon god was not lying. He was also a stage 2 world deity, and even if he could not absorb energy from the outside world, his powerful body could still survive for a long time. It should be normal for him to maintain 6 extra arms for 100 million years. 100 million years? He would have long become a stage 4 world deity. Humph! The black-robed Shuang turned around and took a step, passing through the ripples of the array. As for the other 9 starry blue-robed Shui Yings, they dissipated like bubbles. The countless black shackles also dissipated into nothingness. Sending Dongwu Shuang off, the great demon god's eyes were filled with rage. The last time, he did not care, but this time, he was forced to grow 6 arms, and each arm was covered with scales, muscles, and bones. These were the arms of the blood sea demon body, and they were abnormally strong. Each of his arms consumed a lot of energy. Growing 6 arms, almost half of the energy hidden in his body was consumed. He could only maintain it now. If he retracted his arm, he would lose a lot of energy the next time he regenerated it. He had a feeling that this stage 2 world deity would not give up so easily. Bloodshed God Palace, within a secret underground great hall. The huge cosmos furnace was still burning fiercely. Bloodblade was still sitting cross-legged, watching the cosmos furnace. To have great power, one must have great patience. Bloodblade was very clear about how difficult it was to take that step. The degree of difficulty of this step was much higher than the difficulty of becoming an almighty being as a stage 4 world deity. However, the moment he stepped out, he, the Bloodblade, would become the undisputed strongest expert. He would completely surpass the 3 rulers of the Abyss, the Temporal Island Lord, and the others. However, Bloodblade knew that all of them wanted to take that step. Bloodblade, that Dongwu brat has cultivated 2 secret techniques from the sealed world pagoda and is now fighting with that prisoner. The black bird on Bloodblade's shoulder said. Just a little bit more. That prisoner grew 6 arms, and now he has a total of 8. If he focuses on defense, that brat Dongwu won't be able to kill him. As his teacher, you're too ruthless. Are you really going to force him to become a stage 3 world deity before he can learn the absolute art? I have to force him a little. His talent has always been high, and his heart is filled with arrogance. This arrogance needs to be suppressed and tempered, Bloodblade calmly said. Although Dongwu Shuang was a disciple with a good temper, God Emperor was very clear that anyone with great accomplishments would have their own arrogance. That arrogance needed to be tempered and tempered. For example, God Emperor himself had failed time and time again in his attempt to grasp a higher level of power from the cosmos furnace. After countless failures, God Emperor had even prepared himself for 1,000,000,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000,000 years. To not be arrogant or rash even after 1,000,000,000,000 years, what kind of temperament did one have to have? The moment one became anxious, one would be unable to comprehend anything. Dongwu Shuang, who had been intentionally tempered by his teacher, was currently flying back to Crimson Stone Courtyard from the back of the mountain range. Senior apprentice brother Dongwu. Some of the disciples within Crimson Stone Courtyard greeted him respectfully. Dongbu Shuang responded with a smile and soon returned to his cave dwelling. Master was able to set up this test. If it was so easy to succeed, then there wouldn't be much meaning to the test. Dongbu Shuang quickly suppressed his complicated thoughts. When I fought with that prisoner, if he hadn't grown 6 arms, I could have easily exhausted him to death. But now that he has grown 6 arms, I have to become even stronger. Not only must my true body become stronger, but my world bodies must also become stronger. My world bodies must also be able to threaten him. If his true body was slightly stronger, the great demon god could rely on his realm to defend against it. If his 9 world bodies were able to injure him, then it would not be easy for the great demon god to defend against them. To make the world bodies even more threatening, I must create an even more powerful secret art. Dongbu Shuang thought. He was in no rush. His current strength was already at the limit of what he could raise in a short period of time. If he wanted to raise it any further, he would need much more time. He first accompanied his wife, Jingqiu, as they ate and chatted. Snow Eagle. Jingqiu poured wine for Dongbu Shuang and asked, "Yu and Qi Niao have long since become deities. The 2 of them can't possibly stay in Crimson Stone Mountain forever, right? For safety reasons, they have avatar techniques. They can also do the same as us and let their avatars roam the deity world. My idea is to let them roam the deity world as they wish. Their combat power is still too weak," Dongbu Shuang said. "Even with a world deity grade secret art, they are comparable to a peak stage deity," Jingqiu said. "Not weak. You were the overlord of Snow Eagle territory when you were 8 years old." Shuang laughed. That was true. He had also allowed them to take risks within Crimson Rock Mountain. Even though the treasure spirit, Crimson Rock, had always been protecting them in secret, his children did not know that he was protecting them, so they had long since been tempered. Thus, they had long since tempered themselves. "How about this? I am currently working hard to deal with a prisoner in the back mountain," Dongbu Shuang said. "The moment I kill the prisoner, I should be able to graduate. If I succeed in a short period of time, I will also send Senior Goodbye and He Fei Yun out of the material world. At that time, I will naturally send Yu and Qin Yao out as well. If I am unable to break through in a short period of time, I will also send them out." Jingqiu nodded and did not press him any further. The main reason was that Dongbu Yu and Qin Yao were both big shots in the Crimson Stone Mountain world. They were near invincible, and there were very few opportunities for them to temper themselves. "Right, Jingqiu, why do I rarely see you cultivate?" Dongbu Shuang asked. "Your talent in cultivation is not bad. I was hoping that you would become a world deity in the future." Jingqiu was startled. She immediately said, "Who said that? My true body often cultivates in Crimson Stone Mountain. My avatar is in the deity world, so naturally, I have to comprehend the heavens and earth. One cultivates in a time-accelerated manner, while the other comprehends the heavens and earth. It is better to work hard and relax at the same time. I feel that you don't cultivate much in Crimson Stone Mountain." Dongbu Shuang shook his head. "Jingqiu, don't slack on your cultivation. If your realm is too low, you won't be able to live for long. Those peak deities usually only live for 100 million years or so before they are unable to maintain their true deity hearts. Their true deity hearts will begin to crumble." "I understand." Jingqiu smiled. She felt a sweetness in her heart. "I know you can't bear to part with me." Dongbu Shuang nodded. He had given many spirit fruits and treasures to his wife. As the master of Crimson Stone Mountain, he naturally had many treasures. After all, the treasures left behind by Sacred Master Crimson Dust after his death belonged to him. It was just that if he did not work hard, how could he become a world deity? Within the cultivation room of the cavern, a fragrance pervaded the air. The black-robed Dongbu Shuang was seated cross-legged. Countless runes floated in front of him. These runes rapidly condensed before finally forming a perfect black sphere. This was the chain technique. It was the fundamental deity imprint. Naturally, it had already reached the second level of the chain technique. Both the chain technique and Herculean technique had 6 levels. Stage 1 world deities had a chance of cultivating the first level, while Stage 2 world deities had a chance of cultivating the second level. Dongbu Shuang had long since succeeded in cultivating it. Hua! Countless runes condensed beside him, forming a black water droplet. This was the fundamental deity imprint of the Herculean technique. Dongbu Shuang looked at the tiny black sphere and black water droplet floating in front of him. The utilization of the laws of profound mysteries is truly unfathomable. Dongbu Shuang sighed in praise. The 2 secret techniques of the sealed world pagoda were truly exquisite. For instance, the great chaotic true force could already be considered quite exquisite. However, it used the same laws of profound mysteries to form a water droplet. As for the Herculean technique, its power was more than double that of the great chaotic true force. This was because the Herculean technique of the sealed world pagoda utilized the laws of profound mysteries of the water droplet to a greater degree. Observe these 2 secret techniques and comprehend how to utilize the laws of profound mysteries within them. Then I can use them to create a secret skill, Dongbu Shuang muttered to himself. It was just like when he was still a transcendent. He had borrowed the profoundness of the great chaotic true force imprint to create the chaotic suppression. It was the same principle. Observe the profound mysteries of the secret technique, absorb them, and create a secret skill. This was a path that many experts would choose. However, it was relatively difficult and time-consuming. I'll take it slow. Dongbu Shuang began to concentrate on comprehending the profound mysteries of the 2 secret techniques of the sealed world pagoda. He wanted to absorb them and create an even more powerful secret skill. Within Crimson Rock Mountain, the white-robed Dongbu Shuang was also cultivating. Other than comprehending secret techniques, he would occasionally relax and go out for a stroll. He wanted to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth so that he could comprehend a 3rd grade 1 deity heart, the extremity deity heart. Comprehending another grade 1 deity heart was the most direct way to increase his strength. Moreover, comprehending the laws of heaven and earth did not affect the creation of a secret skill. Chapter 497. In the blink of an eye, it had been 1,000 years since Dongbu Shuang became the personal disciple of Bloodblade. The entire deity world had long since heard that Bloodblade had accepted another personal disciple, the brat Dongbu from the Myriad Flower Feast, and that Dongbu had become a Stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. He was ranked at the forefront of the entire history of the deity world and Dark Abyss. Many powerful existences sighed and regretted not accepting such a disciple. However, none of this affected Dongbu Shuang. After all, he had yet to graduate, and was still cultivating in the Bloodshed God Palace. South, on a chain of mountains next to the Crimson Stone Courtyard, the black-robed Dongbu Shuang was currently flying through the sky towards his destination. The wind howled, but Dongbu Shuang's eyes remained calm. This was his 3rd time heading towards the location of the prisoner. The first time, he had just become a Stage 2 world deity. He had merely gone to investigate the strength of the prisoner, but a single roar had shattered his world body. The second time, he had cultivated many secret techniques and created his own secret skills, but all his efforts had been in vain. This was the 3rd time. I've arrived. Dongbu Shuang slowed down his speed. A ripple appeared in front of him. He passed through the ripple. His surroundings were still shrouded in darkness. The great demon god who cultivated the Blood Sea demonic body was still seated cross-legged. He had 8 arms, 2 of which were shackled. The shackles were also suppressing the great demon god's world deity energy and true deity heart, preventing him from escaping. The great demon god raised his head. Beneath his pair of horns, his scarlet eyes stared at Dongbu Shuang. The corners of his mouth curled up. You've arrived? Faster than I expected. It's only been 1,000 years, but you're still a Stage 2 world deity. What new trump card do you have? You'll find out soon enough. The black-robed Dongbu Shuang coldly replied. Hua hua hua. Countless black chains appeared around Dongwu Shui Ying's body. They quickly spread out in all directions, covering the entire dark area. However, the great demon god did not care at all. At the same time, the countless black chains swimming around the great demon god instantly wrapped around the great demon god. Like before, the great demon god exerted some strength in an attempt to break free. The great demon god tried to break free but was unable to do so. This caused the great demon god to be startled. The power of these chains has increased by so much? With this one move, it should be enough for him to dominate the universe deities in the second heaven. However, many stage 2 world deities, such as those who cultivated the extremity deity heart or the world deity heart, had the means to traverse and escape. The world prison was unable to truly restrain the enemy. What was more important was the suppression of all domains. No matter where you escape to, you will be suppressed by the chains within the range of my domain. And because the great demon god was imprisoned here, he could not escape, so he was easily bound by the chains of the world. Break! The great demon god's entire body erupted with strength, his aura skyrocketing. His 8 arms exerted strength, and the countless chains wrapped around him were instantly shattered. Around him, numerous Dongwu Shuang dressed in starry blue robes appeared. A total of 9 Dongwu Shuang were scattered in different directions, each holding a spear and attacking. The spears streaked across the sky, bringing with them a terrifying power that caused the surrounding space to collapse. One by one, the spears stabbed towards the great demon god. The great demon god also waved his 8 palms to block. Pun! When the palms collided with the spear tip, the terrifying power caused the great demon god to be shocked. He could not help but take a step back. Following the other spears, the great demon god was besieged, and he had to constantly move his feet to reduce the power of the spears. The power of the spears was no longer enough for him to stand on the same spot. Boom! In the distance, the black-robed Dongwu Shuang took the opportunity to stab with his spear. The spear was ferocious, and in an instant, the scarlet cloud's spear arrived behind the great demon god. The great demon god waved his arm, wanting to dodge the attack from the side. However, when his palm struck the spear tip, the scales on his palm shattered. The spear tip changed direction slightly, but it still stabbed into the back of the great demon god. The scales were shattered, and a large hole was pierced through his back, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Ah! The great demon god was shocked, and he shouted, "Your spear technique has changed. As long as it can kill you, it is a good spear technique." The black-robed Dongwu Shuang attacked wildly from afar. The scarlet cloud's spear traversed several kilometers, and its power was monstrous. The attacks of the other 9 world bodies were similarly violent. It was enough to shatter the scales of the great demon god. However, it was not to the extent of shattering the particles. Still, it was enough to change the shape of his body. "If you want to kill me, even if my true deity heart and my world deity energy are sealed, don't even think of killing me." The great demon god separated 3 of his arms to defend against Dongwu Shui Ying's scarlet cloud spear. As for the attacks of the other 9 mirage bodies, he mainly relied on his 5 arms to block them. Sometimes, he would rather use his body to block 1 or 2 attacks. For a moment, the scales on the great demon god's body kept shattering. Although he seemed to be heavily injured, the scales turned into water and rapidly healed. There were no substantial injuries at all. Ping, countless black shackles came to bind him. The power of the shackles had increased, and every time, he had to use his full strength to strike. This affected the great demon god's defense. Fortunately, the spear techniques of his world bodies are still unable to injure me. The great demon god felt sullen. Damn it! If I wasn't completely sealed and unable to dodge, I wouldn't be in such a miserable state. If I could use my full strength, I would be able to slap him to death in 2 or 3 moves. Relying on these 2 secret skills, as I expected, their power is still lacking. Dongwu Shuang thought. Then I shall use my final killing move. The black-robed Dongwu Shuang and the 9-starry blue-robed Dongwu Shuang all changed their spear techniques at the same time. The spears streaked across in an astonishing arc, tearing apart and destroying everything. When the spear pierced over, even the great demon god was shocked. He could feel a faint threat. This was the first time he felt threatened when fighting against this Stage 2 world deity. When the spear pierced over, it displayed a scene of everything being destroyed. This spear seemed to represent destruction. The Scarlet Cloud spear and the other 9 spears each represented destruction that caused one's heart to palpitate. I must block it! The great demon god even split out 4 of his arms to defend against the Scarlet Cloud spear. The Scarlet Cloud spear was a blood-refined deity weapon and was also an upper-grade world deity rank weapon. Its power was clearly much stronger. One could see the 4 arms of the great demon god creating a space-time mirage. From the side, the 4 arms were either slapping or pulling, causing the Scarlet Cloud spear to change direction, preventing it from piercing into the great demon god. However, under the influence of the black chains, the other 9 spears were not so easy to defend against. Pu, a total of 5 spears pierced into the great demon god. The great demon god's body was smashed into pieces, with many bloody holes appearing. In an instant, the great demon god's body was covered in blood. This caused the great demon god's eyes to be filled with shock and anger. The world body can injure me? Great demon god, you're dead! Dongwu Shuang roared. Die! From different directions, the 10 Dongwu Shuangs were madly attacking. The black chains entangled him time and time again. The great demon god roared in anger as he struggled to break free from the black chains. He tried his best to defend against the attacks, but the power of each spear was extremely strong. The power of the Scarlet Cloud spear was even more terrifying. He had to split out 4 of his arms to barely defend against it. After all, the great demon god was barehanded. He did not even have a weapon. His scales were not enough to defend against any of the spears. His scales were shattered, his muscles were torn, and his bones were broken. The great demon god's injuries were extremely severe. How can this be? The great demon god was extremely unwilling. You're just a Stage 2 world deity, yet you've already created such a destructive secret skill? And you actually succeeded! It's all because of you! Dongwu Shuang roared. The secret skill killer move that they created could contain the laws of heaven and earth in one move, and its power was extremely terrifying. Encompassing as many rules of the world as possible, and using them to their fullest was the path of the strongest secret skill. Stage 4 world deities, for example, were gradually able to comprehend the various deity hearts, even though they were stuck at the final step and were unable to become powerful existences. However, Stage 4 world deities would usually create terrifying killing moves that encompassed as many laws of the world as possible. Some of them were even more powerful than ordinary almighties due to the perfect coordination of the heaven and earth laws and the strength of their secret techniques. The same ingredients, but the quality of the dishes made was different. Powerful existences could generally create killing moves that were stronger than Stage 4 world deities. But there were still extremely powerful Stage 4 world deities. If all Stage 4 world deities were able to create such a killing move, then it would be impossible for them to do so. Only a small number of Stage 3 world deities could successfully create such a move. The moment they succeeded, they would be able to stand at the apex with this secret skill alone. For example, the Lord of White Sand City's true secret techniques weren't that strong. His only trump card was the Annihilation White Sand. The Annihilation White Sand mainly relied on the secret technique he obtained from the Sealed World Pagoda and his long years of perfecting it. But Dongwu Shuang was different. He was more ambitious. He wanted to fuse the destruction of the laws of heaven and earth into a single move. From his point of view, the world, chaos whole, and extremity deity hearts were at different stages of the destruction of the laws of heaven and earth. It was a pity that he had yet to comprehend the extremity deity heart. Thus, the power of this move wasn't fierce enough. But even so, Dongwu Shuang had spent a great deal of effort to create this move. He had comprehended the laws of heaven and earth, and became a stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. But under the acceleration of time, he had spent nearly 90,000 years perfecting this move. He had entered seclusion for 100,000 years, nearly 90,000 years, all for the sake of this move. His talent was extremely high, and the world, chaos whole, and extremity deity heart were the 3 stages of destruction of the laws of heaven and earth. Although he had yet to comprehend the extremity deity heart, Dongbui Shuang had already comprehended the extremity heart when he was a transcendent, and he had long since reached the limits of the deity realm. With the assistance of a portion of the extremity heart, Dongbui Shuang had finally created a move that represented the destruction of the world, the spear technique destruction. I really didn't expect that I would die in your hands, in the hands of a stage 2 world deity. I really can't accept this. I can't accept this. The great demon god's entire body was in tatters, and his life force had been completely exhausted. His body could no longer recover, and his other 6 arms were beginning to collapse. Pooh! Following the wound on the great demon god's head, the scarlet cloud spear pierced into the great demon god's skull. The great demon god's scarlet eyes were filled with anger and unwillingness. But gradually, his aura began to dim. Dongbui Shuang pulled out his spear, and the 9 world bodies around him dissipated. The world chains also dissipated. This spear technique of mine, destruction, wants to encompass the destruction of the laws of heaven and earth, but it is still too crude. Dongbui Shuang thought, if I can comprehend the extremity deity heart, then this move will have a basic framework. To truly reach the grand completion, he had to become a stage 4 world deity. At that time, he would be able to comprehend the other deity hearts he had yet to comprehend. Only by comprehending the many world deity hearts would he be able to reach the grand completion of this move. But to deal with the sealed and imprisoned great demon god, this should be enough. Dongbui Shuang looked at the corpse of the great demon god. This great demon god's strength was probably close to that of the White Sand City Lord. If he was not restricted, he would probably be killed in a few moves. But if that was the case, his teacher would not have used him as a test. Ka ka ka! Suddenly, next to the corpse of the great demon god, the ground began to bulge up. Dongbui Shuang was startled. The bulge rose up to a height of more than 10 meters, and there were layers upon layers of stairs, forming the shape of a tower. At the very top of the bulge, a bright white sphere suddenly appeared. This white sphere floated in the air, and its entire body was dazzling white. At the same time, it emitted a sharp light that caused Dongbui Shuang to feel apprehensive. This white sphere floated and rotated slowly, with a formless sharp light surrounding it. The sharp light it emitted easily cut through the surrounding space, causing countless cracks to appear in the space. As Dongbui Shuang looked at it, he felt an instinctive sense of oppression and fear. He even felt that, this white sphere, even a stage 4 world deity would be able to cut through it, much less him. Dongbui, walk forward and grab it. A cold voice rang out. Teacher? Dongbui Shuang heard it. Grab it? That sharp light would probably shatter him into pieces. But since his teacher had instructed him to do so, and he had also cultivated a doppelganger technique, he had nothing to fear. He immediately walked up the stairs step by step. As he neared the white sphere, the sharp light emitted by the white sphere began to retract. As he neared, Dongbui Shuang could vaguely see the countless patterns on the surface of the white sphere. These patterns were mysterious and unfathomable. With a grab, he grabbed onto the white sphere. Rumble! At that moment, a terrifying force was emitted from the white sphere, instantly rushing into Dongbui Shuang's body. Even the surface of his body was covered with a layer of white flowing light, as though he was wearing a bright white armor. Dongbui Shuang, who was standing on the stairs, was dressed in white armor. His aura was soaring, and he was emitting a terrifying sharp light. The sharp light emitted from his body cut through the surroundings wantonly. This was a terrifying force that could cause even powerful existences to be wary of him. Dongbui Shuang's mind was in a state of chaos. Luminous sun, extreme yang, unyielding, indestructible, unbreakable. A majestic voice reverberated in Dongbu Shui Ying's mind. A huge amount of mysterious information surged into his mind. Even with the strength of Dongbu Shui Ying's true deity heart, he was unable to think for a moment, as he was drowned by the endless information. Chapter 499. Sometimes it was an instant, sometimes it was a long time. Within his consciousness, the surging flow of information finally came to a stop. His true deity heart could now easily think. Within his vast sea of consciousness, the little person who looked similar to Shui Ying was currently looking up at a dazzling white ball of light floating above. This white ball of light had countless patterns revolving around it. It was incomparably mysterious. Looking at this white ball of light, Dongbu Shui Ying felt as though he was looking at the laws of the material world. As a lord of a material world, he could transform into a mortal world and look at the laws of the material world. It was vast, much more complicated than the laws of the world. Billions of mortal worlds formed the material world. But now, looking at this white ball of light, it had the charm of the material world's laws. It is indeed an absolute art that even powerful existences yearn for. It is an absolute art that can allow one to transcend realms. Although Dongbu Shui Ying was prepared for this, he could not help but feel excited after receiving such a huge amount of information. He was fortunate enough to be accepted as a disciple by Blood Blade during the Myriad Flower Feast. Then, he became a Stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. That was how he was accepted as a personal disciple and had the chance to learn an absolute art. As for the crude spear art destruction that he had painstakingly created after 100,000 years of hard work, only then was he able to successfully kill the prisoner, the great demonic god, and learn the ultimate art. This was actually secondary. After all, it was just a difference of a step earlier or a step later. Luminous sun. Extreme yang and unyielding, indestructible. Dongbu Shui Ying revealed a smile as he walked down the stairs. He casually sat cross-legged on an empty ground and began cultivating this absolute art. After all, this was the Bloodshed God Palace. It was extremely safe, and nobody could barge into this prison. Furthermore, this absolute art was too tempting. Thus, Dongbu Shui Ying decided to cultivate here. The Luminous Sun, absolute art had a total of 6 volumes. Stage 1 world deities could cultivate the first volume, Stage 2 world deities could cultivate the second, and so on. Every volume had a total of 4 transformations. The first transformation was the entry level. The second transformation was the small success level. The third transformation was the large success level. The fourth transformation was the grand completion level. As an absolute art, cultivating it was extremely difficult. It would be amazing if one could cultivate it to the large success level. He wanted to truly cultivate to the grand perfection of Fourth Revolution. It was truly difficult. Emperor Gerzang, for example, had an ultimate technique, but he still wasn't qualified to become one of the 3 patriarchs. For example, Monarch Green also cultivated an absolute art. However, he could be said to be the strongest expert below the level of Blood Blade and Temporal Island Lord. This was the difference between cultivating absolute arts. For example, the Bamboo Mountain Prefecture Master was only a universe god of the 4th heaven, but he relied on his unique skill to become one of the 3 ancestors. He had also taught personal disciples before, and some of his disciples had been lucky enough to be taught absolute arts. However, none of them had reached such a dazzling level. Phew! Dongbu Shui Ying sat down cross-legged and took a deep breath. The 9 golden pearls on the ground in front of him immediately released a golden light into Dongbu Shui Ying's mouth. His comprehension ability was already extremely high, and he was able to become a Stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. How powerful was that? Then, he spent a total of 100,000 years to refine the secret skill, creating the current spear art of destruction, which was still considered crude. However, its power was already rather great. One could say that in terms of understanding and utilization of the laws of profound mysteries, Dongbu Shui Ying was one of the top among Stage 2 world deities. Cultivating the first volume was naturally easy for him, but cultivating the second volume was extremely strenuous. The luminous sun is based on the world deity heart. I have already grasped hold of the world deity heart back in the Xia people's world. Profound mysteries of the world is what I specialize in, but cultivating it is still strenuous. Dongbu Shuang thought to himself, its control over the laws of profound mysteries is simply unimaginable. It is much, much more profound than world deity ranked secret techniques. No wonder this absolute art is able to transcend realms. Transcending realms was extremely difficult. A stage 2 world deity could sweep away a stage 1 world deity. A stage 3 world deity could sweep away a stage 2 world deity. For example, if not for that prisoner being sealed and suppressed, he would have been able to destroy Dongbu Shuang in a few moves. A stage 4 world deity could similarly sweep away a stage 3 world deity. On the contrary, the difference in power between a powerful existence and a stage 4 world deity was not that great. This was because a stage 4 world deity could practically grasp the complete laws of the world, and was just a step away from becoming a powerful existence. Thus, there were more stage 4 world deities who could fight against powerful existences. Hu. These 9 golden beads were called golden fiend crystals. They contained the sharpness of the golden fiend, which was required to cultivate the luminous sun. It was also one of the treasures that Blood Blade had bestowed upon Dongbu Shuang. However, the sharpness of the golden fiend within these 9 beads was only sufficient for him to cultivate the second volume to perfection. When Dongbu Shuang became a stage 3 world deity in the future, he would have to search for treasures by himself. That's right, there was an obvious difference between an absolute art and a world deity ranked secret technique, which was that the former required external help to cultivate. After cultivating for an entire night, Dongbu Shuang opened his eyes and kept the 9 beads with a wave of his hand. The luminous sun, absolute art, is truly difficult. Even after cultivating for an entire night, I am still unable to cultivate it to the third transition. After Dongbu Shuang stood up, countless white rays flew out from the surface of his body. The white rays crisscrossed and flew in a zigzag manner. The rays were extremely sharp. These white rays were the luminous sun force cultivated from cultivating the luminous sun. Back then, the chain technique and Herculean technique were merely a part of the luminous sun, absolute art. After learning the absolute art, the 2 secret techniques were naturally useless. Chi. The white luminous sun force crisscrossed and was extremely sharp. Even a stage 3 world deity would feel threatened. Humph! With the luminous sun force circulating within his body, Dongbu Shuang punched out fiercely. Hong long. The space was bombarded layer by layer. It crushed everything in its path, causing the dark space to tremble. The power of the punch was even stronger than that of the prisoner, the great demon god. Of course, because the great demon god's true deity heart and world deity power were sealed, he was naturally much weaker just by relying on his physical strength alone. But the power of a single punch from Dongbu Shuang was already so strong. It was obvious that it was comparable to a stage 3 world deity. If I can master the third revolution, I will be able to dominate the stage 3 world deities, Dongbu Shuang thought. This was the power of an absolute art. It was normal to be able to fight against those of a higher realm. Dongbu brat, stop showing off. Once you're done, hurry over and meet your master. An ear-piercing voice rang out. Dongbu Shuang immediately knew that it was the voice of the black bird that followed his master. Yes. Dongbu Shuang felt slightly awkward. It seemed like the black bird had clearly seen him practicing his move. Following which, he quickly passed through the ripples of the formation and passed through the mountains, returning to Crimson Stone Courtyard with a smile. Crimson Stone Courtyard, a quiet garden. Blood Blade was standing with his hands behind his back. This was the place where he usually met his disciples. Dongbu Shuang walked into the garden and bowed. Master. Only then did Blood Blade turn around. After a night of practice, how is it? Blood Blade's lips curled upwards. The first 2 revolutions of the second volume were quite easy. However, after a night of tormenting the third volume, I feel that I am still lacking a little. Dongbush Shuang said respectfully. He originally thought that he had accumulated a lot after spending 100,000 years creating the secret skill. Who would have thought that he would not even be able to master the third revolution? According to the information from Luminous Sunday, under normal circumstances, the first revolution was easy, while the second was harder. However, as long as one's comprehension was not bad, they would be able to master it after spending some time. Those with high comprehension could master it in a short period of time. The third revolution was extremely difficult. Only those with high comprehension could master it. Fourth revolution? It was almost impossible to master it. There were only two possibilities for one to master it. One's comprehension was truly monstrous. The other was to increase one's realm. For example, a stage 1 world deity could not master the fourth revolution of the first volume. However, if they became a stage 2 world deity, they would naturally be able to master the fourth revolution of the first volume. Despite Dongbush Shui Ying's accumulations and comprehension, he was still unable to master the third revolution of the second volume. Your comprehension is quite high. Since you were able to kill that demonic god, you should be able to master the third revolution after spending some time. Bloodblade nodded. Since you have obtained the Luminous Sun Absolute Art, it is time for you to leave and establish your own sect. Chapter 500. Bloodblade's eyes suddenly shot out two illusory streaks of light that entered Dongbush Shui Ying's eyes. A large amount of information was transmitted. The extremity deity heart lies in the origin, the beginning, the end, and the one. This time, the transmission was mainly about the extremity deity heart and the space-time deity heart, as well as some reminders about becoming a powerful existence. Even though the amount of information was huge, Dongbush Shuang was now a stage 2 world deity, and his true deity heart was much stronger than before. He only paused for 1 or 2 seconds before regaining his clarity of mind. Thank you, teacher. Dongbush Shuang knelt down to express his gratitude. Imparting an absolute art and the comprehension of the laws of the world to him was truly a huge favor. After you graduate and establish your own sect, I won't be able to guide you often. You'll have to rely on yourself for everything. Bloodblade said indifferently. The Bloodshed God Emperor said indifferently. The path of cultivation ultimately depends on you. To you, becoming a stage 4 world deity isn't a difficult matter. What's difficult is taking that final step and transcending the river of time. Thus, you must remember not to absorb faith. This disciple understands, Dongbush Shuang replied. Absorbing faith was a form of assistance, but it was also a form of karma. Karma entangled one, and it would be extremely difficult to break free from its shackles and transcend. There were stage 4 world deities with strength comparable to powerful existences, but the majority were unable to break free from the shackles of karma. Your homeland, the Xia people's world, should correspond to the eastern region of the Calm Sea Prefecture, right? Bloodblade said. Yes, Dongbush Shuang respectfully replied. The Calm Sea Prefecture was one of the 19 prefectures of the Bloodshed God Palace and was incomparably huge. As such, the Calm Sea Prefecture was divided into 5 major regions: north, south, east, west, and central. Regardless of whether it was the deity world, the dark abyss, or the material world, one had to rely on the moon and the sun to determine one's direction. The sun was the most easterly, while the moon was the most westerly. In that case, I'll appoint you as the supervisor of the eastern region of the Calm Sea Prefecture, with a rank of 3rd rank, Bloodblade said. Bloodblade said. You have the right to recruit a personal guard, with a tentative limit of 4,000 people. They will be a second-class army. The warship's armor and quartermaster will go with you. You will have full authority to recruit your personal guards. Yes. Dongbush Shuang sighed inwardly. His master was truly magnanimous. He really didn't care about the rumors and slanders. What did the 3rd rank represent? In the entire Calm Sea Prefecture, only the Calm Sea Prefecture master had a higher rank than him. Under normal circumstances, only Stage 4 world deities could obtain the third rank. Clearly, as the personal disciple of God Emperor, his rank had been set very high by His Majesty. Go. You'll have to face everything on your own in the future. No matter what the consequences are, you'll have to bear the consequences yourself. Remember, don't destroy yourself, Bloodblade said. Yes, this disciple shall take his leave. Dongwu Shuang kowtowed as he stood up and left. Bloodblade watched on silently. Although he was one of the strongest experts in the deity world and Dark Abyss, there was not much he could do when it came to guiding his disciples. He could guide them in their cultivation, impart their absolute arts, and bestow them with enough treasures. As for anything else, he truly had no other choice. He did not care about how much trouble Dongwu Shuang would cause. He, Bloodblade, had nothing to fear. However, he was worried that Dongwu Shuang would stop at Stage 4. After all, over the years, he had only taught 2 disciples who had become powerful existences. Bloodblade, this Dongwu brat has his own path. He was able to become so powerful even without the guidance of a powerful master. With your guidance, he will definitely have a bright future ahead of him. The black bird on Bloodblade's shoulder shouted. Bloodblade quickly calmed himself down. He was used to being calm. Over the years, many people had risen up and received attention. However, not many of them had survived the erosion of time. He could only hope that this talented Dongwu would be able to transcend. On the same day, the quartermaster came to pay his respects. The quartermaster was a Stage 2 world deity called World Deity Chuqing. He was rather amiable, and he bowed respectfully. Your Highness, I have brought along the battleships, armors, and other military necessities. There are 5 battleships and 5,000 sets of armors. 5,000 sets? Dongwu Shuang asked doubtfully. Isn't it a quota of 4,000 people? 4,000 people are part of my personal guard. There are also dozens of officers within the personal guard, the quartermaster said. There might be some losses in the future, so I have prepared everything in advance. Dongwu Shuang nodded. He then asked the question he was most concerned about. The personal guard is a second-grade legion, and the soldiers of second-grade legions should have undergone a secret technique transformation, right? This time, I will be personally recruiting soldiers from the Kamsi Prefecture's eastern region. When the time comes, how will I transform their bodies? Your Highness, please be at ease. World Deity Chuqing smiled. Since I have been assigned as the quartermaster, I will naturally be able to arrange everything. I am well versed in the secret technique transformation, and I have also brought along all the necessary resources, enough to transform the bodies of 5,000 soldiers. Furthermore, His Majesty has placed great importance on Your Highness, so Your Highness's personal guard will undergo the transformation of the Azure Dragon Army's secret technique. After the transformation, any soldier's body will reach the limits of the deity realm, and after donning the special armor, they will be able to display the strength of a threshold world deity. And this is just the strength of a single soldier. If the legion were to move, their strength would be linked together, and their strength would be even greater. Dongwu Shuang's eyes lit up. According to what he knew, the soldiers of a second-grade legion would undergo the transformation of their bodies using a secret technique. Even after donning the special armor, their individual strength would still be at the limits of the deity realm. One must know that when he cultivated the 3rd level of the time immemorial body, he had already reached the threshold of a world deity. Of course, this was also because the time immemorial body's main purpose was to preserve his life, not to attack. However, the transformation of the Azure Dragon Army was clearly one of the more powerful ones. Very good. Dongwu Shuang nodded. However, there is one thing I must inform Your Highness. If it's just the transformation of the deity's body, any deity would be able to do it. World Deity Chuqing said. However, if we were to engage in battle and activate the divine imprints on the armor, we would need to be at the late stage of the deity realm at the very least. Otherwise, if our realm is too low, we would not be able to comprehend the divine imprints and activate the armor. That would affect the entire battle formation. I understand. Dongwu Shuang sighed inwardly. Although the Xiao people had received many precious treasures from him, and their strength had improved by quite a bit, only half of them had reached the late stage of the deity realm. But that was fine. In any case, he could transform the bodies of 5,000 soldiers, and the Xiao people's deities would only amount to a little. A mere 2 days later, Dongbua Shuang brought Jing Qiu, the quartermaster world deity Chu Qing, and the Xiao people's deities on a luxurious dark green starfield flying ship, leaving the Bloodshed God Palace. A starfield flying ship cost at least 10 million deity crystals. However, Dongbua Shuiying's starfield flying ship had been personally bestowed upon him by the God Emperor when he became a personal disciple. It was a rather precious treasure. Rumble. The starfield flying ship traveled through the space-time tunnel at an extremely fast speed. Dongbua Shuiying stood at the bow of the ship in high spirits. Back when he had first left the world of the Xiao people, he had been a minor character. Now, however, he was already the Kamsi Prefecture's Eastern Region Patrol Envoy, with 4,000 personal guards and an absolute art at his disposal. Very soon, a bright light appeared in front of him. That was the end of the space-time tunnel. Phew! After flying out, a starry sky appeared outside. At almost the same time, a figure appeared in the distant starry sky. It was the white-robed Dongbua Shuiying. Of course, this was merely a world deity avatar. The white-robed Dongbua Shuiying waved his hand, and several figures immediately appeared beside him. There was the rather handsome Dongbua Yu, the rather domineering Dongbua Qin Yao, the thick-robed senior Ge Bai, the scarlet-cloaked senior He Feiyun, and finally the green-haired Shi Wei. Chapter 501. The thick-robed senior brother Ge Bai's eyes lit up as he saw a luxurious starfield flying ship flying out from the void in front of him. He laughed heartily and said, "This starfield flying ship looks extraordinary at first glance. It's probably worth over 100 million spirit crystals. Old Seven, even if the two of us sold all our treasures, we still wouldn't be able to afford such a starfield flying ship." The scarlet-cloaked youth, He Feiyun, was as cold as ever. He curled his lips. Junior brother Dongbua is the personal disciple of His Majesty. He became a stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. Don't be envious. Hua. The white-robed Dongbua Shuiying turned and left. Shua. He disappeared and returned to the material world. Returning to the material world from the deity world was extremely simple. Of course, this was only for the lords of the material world. As long as he willed it, the Xia people's world would attract him and pull him over. Usually, he would be able to reach the Xia people's world in the blink of an eye. But this time, something unexpected had happened. This is... The white-robed Dongbua Shuiying looked at the blurry spatial tunnel around him. At the same time, a vast power descended and enveloped his body. It's the material world's will. Dongbua Shuiying immediately understood. Just like the Xia people's world, a mortal world, it had its own laws. It also had some instincts to reject outsiders and accept the natives. The countless mortal worlds formed the material world. Its laws were even stricter, but it also had some basic instincts. These instincts were the material world's will. The dark abyss also had its own will. To live in the material world, one had to follow the material world's will. 1. The material world's power began to seep into Crimson Rock Mountain. Release the seal on Crimson Rock Mountain. The might of the material world transmitted its will over. Shuiying immediately understood that if he did not abide by the laws of the material world would most likely expel him, the Lord. He obediently released the seal, allowing the material world's power to seep into Crimson Rock Mountain. But soon after, two figures were instantly thrown out of Crimson Rock Mountain, expelled from the material world. Other than the material world's lords, world deities are forbidden from entering the material world. Following which, the material world's power rapidly retreated. In the starry sky of the God world, Dongbua Yu, Dongbua, Qin Yao, Shi Wei, Ge Bai, and He Feiyun were all here. Suddenly, 2 more figures appeared. They were He Feiyun and Ge Bai, who were in a sorry state. The Starfield flying ship had already stopped. Junior brother Dongbo, why did you throw us out? What's going on? I was still cultivating in seclusion when I was thrown out. The two He-Fei-Yun and the two Gebeis watched as Dongbo Shuang and Jingqiu flew down from the Starfield flying ship. Both of them had cultivated cloning techniques. Father, mother! Dongbo Yu, Dongbo Qiniao shouted. Dongbo Shuang smiled and nodded. Then, he turned to Gebai and He-Fei-Yun and said helplessly, Senior brothers, it was not me who threw you out, it was the rules of the material world that threw you out. According to the rules of the material world, the Eden treasures carried by the lords of a material world were prohibited from bringing world deities into the material world. I just found out. Ah. The thick-robed youth, Gebai, was somewhat dumbfounded. And here I thought that it would be absolutely safe to leave an avatar inside. Back when Master Crimson Dust threw Crimson Rock Mountain out, Crimson Rock Mountain didn't have an owner to bring it in. Dongbo Shuang said. The power of the material world is unable to forcefully enter Crimson Rock Mountain, which is why you two were able to stay inside. Now that I've refined Crimson Rock Mountain, when I brought it into the material realm, the material realms will descended and inspected Crimson Rock Mountain. I'm guessing that anyone who brings an abode treasure into the material realm will be inspected. Then what should we do? Gebai and He-Fei-Yun exchanged glances. Crimson Rock Mountain can accelerate time, but the outside world doesn't have such good conditions. The thick-robed youth, Gebai, sighed. Forget it. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't always stay inside Crimson Rock Mountain. Crimson Rock Mountain had its own Eden. It had precious cultivation rooms, time-accelerated facilities, and various experimental environments. Gebai and He-Fei-Yun had once cultivated inside. Both their true bodies and avatars had done their best to cultivate inside, hoping to become Stage 3 world deities. Senior apprentice brothers, what do you plan to do now? Dongbo Shuang laughed. Both of you have one true body and one avatar. Why don't you both follow me to Eastern Region City? That's fine. He-Fei-Yun nodded. Since both bodies have come out, one will return to my clan, while the other will follow you, junior apprentice brother Dongbo. Gebai rubbed his chin and teased. However, I'm afraid I'll have to rely on junior apprentice brother's help in researching arrays. It's a small matter. Dongbo Shuang laughed. Let's hurry up and board the flying ship. We'll be heading to Eastern Region City. He had a personal guard of 4,000, and the Bloodshed God Palace paid him an adequate salary every year. Thus, the cultivation needs of Gebai and He-Fei-Yun were not worth mentioning. The stars around it were nothing more than decorations, and the meandering river that flowed through the starry sky spanned 1 trillion kilometers and encircled the entire Eastern Region City. In terms of scale, Eastern Region City was second only to the prefecture capital. It was comparable to the other 3 regional cities. Today, at the entrance of East Region City, there was a large number of soldiers standing in rows. At the front of the soldiers, there were universe gods. There was a total of 8 universe gods in the 3rd heaven. As for Stage 2 world deities, there were more than 100. Today, almost all the superpowers in the eastern region of the Calm Sea Prefecture have arrived. The leader was a middle-aged man in white robes. He smiled and said, This supervisor envoy of ours has quite the reputation. I remember that only half of the people who came to welcome me when I took up my post. Ha! I don't mean anything by it. This supervisor envoy of ours, His Highness Dongbo, is a personal disciple of His Majesty, and he's even a 3rd-rank world deity. Within the Calm Sea Prefecture, only the prefecture master is higher than him. Even I have to bow down to him. General M.O., there are only 8 Stage 3 world deities here. There's still one missing. A muscular man with a bullhead said with a smile. Indeed, there's one missing. That one is quite arrogant, to actually refuse to come. A bewitching woman holding a feather fan smiled. She and His Highness Dongbo have a grudge against each other, and I thought that she would come to resolve it. Who would have thought that she really wouldn't come? Interesting. I wonder what little sister Venomous Ying's expression was like when she found out that His Highness Dong Bo was accepted as a personal disciple by His Majesty, and became a Stage 2 world deity in just 5,000 years. These Stage 3 world deities were all chatting and laughing. That's right. Currently, all Stage 3 world deities of the Kamsi Prefecture, regardless of whether they were in seclusion or adventuring outside, had rushed over to welcome them. There was only one exception, the Venomous-ing world deity. She had previously formed a grudge against Dongwu Shuiying, and the various superpowers of the eastern region were all secretly wondering whether or not this Venomous-ing world deity would come. Would His Highness Dong Bo give her any face? However, everyone guessed that the Venomous-ing world deity would snatch away His Highness Dong Bo's wife to be ravaged by her nephew. Given His Highness Dong Bo's status, he would definitely not tolerate such humiliation. In the end, the Venomous-ing world deity did not even come. His Highness has arrived. Immediately, the vast crowd of world deities turned to look into the distance. In the distant starry sky, a deep green ship flew out from a space-time tunnel, crushing the surrounding airflow as it rapidly arrived.